In a certain dungeon, a 17-year-old swordsman named Van fights off an entire horde of monsters without even breaking a sweat. Finally, he arrives right into the deepest part of the dungeon, where the Dungeon King is awaiting his arrival with a lot of curiosity. The Dungeon's king is the black dragon called Obsidian, who welcomes Van with open fangs, applauding him for coming so far. Obsidian is his opponent now, and Van is evidently scared about facing this giant monster in just a few seconds' time. Obsidian notices the scared look on the human's face, which makes him laugh. However, Van makes an excuse about the outside of the dungeon being really hot. He even has the audacity to ask the mighty dragon to fan him with his wings. His request does take the beast by surprise, but he agrees to make his rival comfortable, which is why he fans him with his wings to make him feel better. Watching Van enjoy himself so much, Obsidian expresses that he doesn't want to go back to his human form anymore. This statement makes Van ask if his accent and speech is part of the whole dragon roleplay as well. Obsidian tells him that he just wanted to surprise him because they haven't seen each other for a while, but the confused look on Van's face makes him agree to change back. It's clear that Van is being too boring for him today. The next second, Obsidian releases his dragon form and turns into the cute Ryuka, with horns and a tail still intact on her human form. Van hands over a special care package from his mom which contains veggies, even though she only eats meat. Well, she's going to eat anything that's a gift from his mother, so it doesn't really matter. The two friends share a beverage together, talking about the weather outside because Ryuka, the strongest black dragon king of the dungeon, can't believe that it's really that hot outside. Van is the only person to conquer this dungeon, telling her that it's summer outside so it's definitely hot. It turns out that these two are childhood friends, which gives Van the right to ask her if he can stop her subordinate monsters from attacking him. It's clear that he feels sorry for beating them up every time, however Ryu still thinks that it's her job as dungeon monsters to attack him, which isn't totally wrong. Meanwhile, all the monsters that have been defeated by Van gather around to spy on their conversation, discussing their friendship because Van's house is quite far, which allows these two to meet only once a month. The entire monster horde watches them with hard eyes, feeling the wholesome vibe of the two friends until it's time for Van to leave. Of course, Ryuka is sad since she had a reincarnation game prepared for them to play, but Van has a surprise in store for her too. He announces that he has joined the Adventurers Guild in the town nearby, which means he is going to start living nearby. This news might not be the happiest for the monsters as they don't want to get beaten up every day. However, Ryuka is too happy because she figures that Van has moved here to visit her every day. She clearly thinks that he doesn't have any friends besides her. Promising to see her tomorrow, Van leaves the dungeon, leaving the entire group of monsters swooning over this odd pair of childhood friends and their time together. It looks like they are about to bear their physical wounds in order to support them, and it certainly tells a lot about their big heart. There's a monster meeting happening on the bottom floor of the dungeon, where the main point of the discussion is the infiltration by C-rank adventurers down to the 7th and 8th floors. They aren't too happy about the newbies making it this far, which means that they need to change up the traps. They are trying to come up with a solution, however their Lady Dragon Queen is spacing out on the side, clearly not listening to their conversation. Her eyes are stuck on the clock, and it's no wonder why, because it's time for Van to arrive. Even though Ryuka is not ready to admit her impatience, her monster subordinates want her to accept that she feels all the butterflies in her stomach. The questions take her back to 10 years ago, when she was traveling with her family. However, she was stranded alone after getting caught in a storm. She was completely helpless until Van rescued her and they became best friends. They would spend their days playing together, but nights were the most difficult for her as she used to get homesick. The poor little dragon spent her nights crying in her sleep. Her depressed state made Van leave his village to help her find a home, which led them to a long and hard journey. They finally found her home though, but the biggest shock for Van was watching her turn into a person. He surely didn't see that coming. They parted ways, promising to continue their friendship. Afterwards, Ryuka became a dungeon boss, and Van got stronger so he could come see her. Evidently, she is still in denial about feeling something more for him, but her monster lackeys are crushing hard on Van and his bravery at the age of 7. Who wouldn't fall for him, right? Unfortunately, Ryuka is still not ready to accept her feelings, and she expresses her frustration by turning her head into the dragons, scaring everyone around her. Thankfully, Van is not here to see her face like this, or he would have backed off immediately. Suddenly, the announcement tells their little group of beasts that another adventurer has infiltrated the dungeon, making it the 20th entry for the day. The dungeon named Wormhell might be quite dangerous, but it never stops these adventurers from seeking fame and riches, does it? Ryuka is already jittery because Van starts breaching all the floors, one by one. Even the monsters have given up on stopping him, therefore they leave Ryuka alone to wait for her friend. As expected, Van enters the room the next instant, catching her by surprise for getting through the floor so quickly. Both of them fidget for a while until Van tells her that he will see her the next day as well, making her act all cool about it as if she doesn't care at all. Luckily, Van is smart to see through her act as he knows that she feels lonely in her dungeon too, and their banter continues while the rest of the monsters watch with smiles plastered on their faces. The two childhood friends are playing an intense game of reincarnation, where you aim for the strongest rebirth, while the monsters of the dungeon watch them with fascination. Even though they really don't understand the rules of the game, they are still happy to see their Lady Dragon Queen having a good time. With all the fun and games though, they can sense that there's no sexiness to it, because they need to make some progress after reaching such a delicate age of 17. At this rate, they are surely never going to hook up, and the loyal subordinates can't witness that. Hearing their concerns, the siren among them volunteers to draw out their desires with her song. They can imagine the two friends losing all self-control. However, the kobold named Wool doesn't think that it's the right kind of progress for them. It's quite cute watching their wholesome bittersweet days, and forcing them into an unwanted situation might just ruin their friendship. Surely they don't want to watch them stop flirting as well. Fortunately, all the monster minions agree, but Harpy still wants their queen to feel some happiness and realize these 10 years worth of feelings. Wool delivers their little gross assembly, not wanting to watch Ryuka make out with her friend. Therefore, the rest of the monsters focus their attention back on the siren. Taking out the guitar, the siren starts playing the song after making sure that the rest of her audience has plugged their ears since she doesn't want anyone else to realize long-lost feelings. The song makes Van and Ryuka's head spin, making them come closer together to criticize Harpy's singing. It turns out that Harpy is one of the awful sirens who cannot fascinate people like the normal ones. This piece of information makes everyone think that Harpy is useless, and they are about to give up on their plan when the two childhood friends arrive to find out what exactly is going on. Ryuka instantly guesses that her minions have been snooping on them the whole time, making her transform into her dragon self, which is enough to scar them for life. Contrary to her reaction, Van invites all of them to play the reincarnation game with them, arguing that more people will make it even more fun. They instantly agree to play, obviously, making their circle quite crowded, which pushes the two friends together without leaving any space between them. Their closeness puts some huge grins on their minions' faces, who completely end up agreeing that wholesomeness is indeed the best. Ryuka lends Van 9 volumes of books to read, actually scaring him by the amount of homework that he has to do. The poor guy leaves without complaining. However, Ryuka starts feeling uneasy immediately after he's gone. Her minions try to ask her the reason behind her bad mood, and she replies by saying that she might have pushed the reading thing too hard on him. It's obvious that she is quite delicate, which is why the monsters think that she actually wants to watch him read the books. In order to do this, she will have to be with him all the time, which can happen only if they get married. Their words don't bring any satisfaction to the poor Dragon Queen, therefore Orkin gives her a magical witchcraft monitor which looks like a computer. Apparently, it can track and show Van in real time, without him even knowing, making Orkin the smartest monster around. Even though Ryuka is not completely on board with peeping on Van the whole time, she ends up watching him read until he finishes the entire volume in one night. Ryuka is all relaxed now, and is ready to shoot some hoops with Van on the upper floor while the minions praise Orkin for coming up with such a brainy solution. Who knew monsters could be so smart? Ryuka keeps a watch over Van's every movement over the next few days, like a complete stalker, making her minions worry about her latest obsession. She tells them that she has been worried about him finding a new girlfriend, or someone to hang out with in the village, but it looks like he has just been strolling around alone for days. Currently, he is sitting by himself with a sullen face, which makes her worried about him. However, they hear him telling his guild adventurer friends that he is also worried about Ryuka not sleeping nowadays. This information makes the monsters laugh inside because both the kids are only concerned about each other, which is totally adorable. Meanwhile, Van's guild friends are begging him to let them meet his female childhood friend, which angers Mino, the bull, who is not ready to let these creepy dudes anywhere near his Dragon Queen. Van also refuses to let them meet his friend, which makes the monsters celebrate with pride. However, Ryuka doesn't seem pleased about it. Finally, both of them decide on talking to each other instead of overthinking every tiny detail, which makes the minions actually happy because their Dragon Queen was getting weirder day by day. At this point, Van notices someone's presence and glares right towards the magical monitor, making everyone in the dungeon think that he has uncovered their little stalking secret. Ryuka turns off the monitor in a hurry, and later comes clean to Van about her recent activities, making both of them discuss their sleepless nights with each other. Van is entering the dungeon once again, ready to show exactly how he gets to the bottom floor with such ease. He zooms right past the entrance with brute force while the monsters prepare to meet him head on. Getting through some sort of puzzle door smoothly, he starts thinking about Ryuka again. Making plans along the way, he reaches the second floor, which is a cave where he hears a scream. After investigating, he comes across a girl with striped clothes, complaining that her companions have left her alone. He's such a nice guy that he hands her the healing herbs, but she demands to be taken to the entrance instead. It's clear that she intends to make him fall for her, but Van doesn't look interested as he picks her up so he can drop her to the entrance as soon as he can. It's revealed that she's actually a succubus monster called Suki, who can lure men and devour life energy. For now, her target is Van, and she intends to defeat this troublesome adventurer. When they finally reach the entrance, she tries to act like a scared damsel. However, Van's cold replies frustrate her too much. She even screams at him for not being able to get in the mood, accusing him of not having a girlfriend because he is so unpopular. He clearly didn't expect to be insulted, therefore he can sense something off about her right away. The rest of the monsters are watching this entire scene from afar, clearly weirded out by the newly appointed succubus. Of all people, she is trying to seduce Van because she doesn't obviously know that he is Ryuka's childhood friend. It looks like the board of directors don't want this information to be common knowledge, but this situation is surely not normal. Mino is quite angry at the succubus for trying to get in between two childhood friends. However, it's pretty clear that it's not going to be an issue, because Van has discovered that she's a succubus from her tattoos. Suki turns back into her normal form when Van tells her that she simply sucks at seduction, making her cry because she's been fired from too many dungeons for being terrible at her job. Turning to her last option, she starts crying to persuade him, which is too much for Mino to handle. Therefore, he jumps to attack her all of a sudden as he doesn't want any more heroines. Lucky for Suki, the chivalrous Van defends her from the monster's attack, giving him the right to go to the Lady Dragon as desired by Mino himself. He darts to meet his friend immediately, making Suki think that he is her fated foe, which can't be anything further from the truth. The monsters don't connect her misunderstanding, and Mino makes it clear that she isn't supposed to go near Van ever again. His command strangely makes Suki think that Mino has a thing for her, even though he is not her type, while the poor Bolt only wants to get back to witnessing his queen's flirting sessions with her friend. At last, Van arrives on the bottom floor, where Ryuka has been waiting for him, and he can finally take a sigh of relief, which makes her think that he is a weirdo for sure. It's well-known information that adventurers earn money by trading rare items or monster scales at the guild. For this reason, Van's adventurer friends ask if he's going to the Wormhell dungeon as well, because everyone is headed that way. If Van wants to move up the ranks, then he's surely going to have to work for it. This is exactly why he asks Ryuka if he can bring something back from the dungeon, and she obviously agrees, because they only keep the treasure to bring in the adventurers anyway for their mana. It's a sure shot win-win. Taking out his list, Van shows her the herbs that he needs, asking if they can go to a floor no one's been to yet, as he doesn't want to steal from his other friends. This gets Ryuka excited, and they go on to explore one of the floors. Shockingly, there are no monsters around, which means that they are slacking off on work. The Dragon Queen might not be too thrilled about that. Of course, she doesn't know that Mino and every other minion emptied the entire 27th floor to give them some time alone. Everyone deserves wingmen like them. Soon, the two friends reach the hidden ruins of the 70th floor, where her dad let the entire treasure hoard from his time. Even though it's a huge mess, they continue talking about Ryuka's family while the minions snoop around from above. Unexpectedly though, a number of mana monsters pop out of the ground, threatening the collapse of the entire dungeon. Loyal Mino and the rest of the minions charge forward to protect their queen. Red Van leads them to it as he starts killing off the mana monsters without losing a second. His fight to protect their queen warms all of the minions' hearts, until Suki arrives to ruin their mood. She is clearly still under the impression that Mino has a crush on her, and her misunderstanding grows when Mino holds her to protect his queen and his friend's privacy. On the other hand, Van has managed to defeat all of the mana monsters, and their focus shifts back to collecting the treasure. During their collection time though, Ryuka trips over something, and lands on top of Van, which turns into a romantic moment with their hearts jumping out of their chests. Their cute embrace is interrupted when Van notices Ryu's father's statue, asking if he can take it back as his treasure. She agrees to his demands, obviously, while the monsters are a little pleased about getting to watch something nice at least. Mino obviously missed out on the fun, while Van's treasure sends the entire guild into an uproar because it's just too precious. Van is walking happily through the village when he bumps into a girl who is accompanied by a rather strong man. It looks like they are adventurers too, as she hopes to meet him in the dungeon, while Ryuka is too upset over Van's cold reaction earlier when they shared a rather intimate moment. She is pouting in front of Harpy, sharing her feelings with her as she knows that her 4 idiotic minions were snooping on them. It's obvious that she wanted him to feel something at least, and this makes Harpy tell her that he is just too used to having the Dragon Queen as a friend. Maybe she needs to show some skin to get his heart racing, and Ryuka is considering this little plan of action too. However, she doesn't want to make her feelings too obvious either, which can only mean that they need to stage a chance encounter like they're in a rom-com. Harpy's long sob story about love stories and movies is practically unheard of by Ryuka, and she has cooked up an entire scenario that can potentially lead to these two friends being in bed together. Before her imagination can turn even wilder, the monsters find out that an enemy adventurer has breached the 45th floor, which is an alarming situation for them since Van has been the only one to reach this milestone before. On the other hand, the mysterious adventure that Van saw earlier and the girl have defeated the Inferno Ogre on the 45th floor. They move forward with the man's eyes screaming danger as he makes his intention of getting to the Black Dragon Queen clear. It looks like Ryuka will just have to sharpen her fangs now. The news of the legendary man Gold's arrival reaches Van very quickly. The town is full of gossipers. According to legends, the man has conquered all dungeons all over the world, fought thousands of bandits at once, and also defeated the Demon King's vessel. Back at the dungeon, the soldiers of the Dragon Queen have evacuated all the non-combat monsters. The Inferno Ogre has been defeated and is going to his special healing session as of now. Now, the 4 soldiers are waiting for the opponents to show up, one of them being the great swordsman Gold and his partner Sylvia, who is a mage that supports him with healing. They conquer dungeons but never take any treasure because their major target is the dungeon owners, which is the Dragon Queen in this case. But the queen herself doesn't seem worried. She is excited to greet the guests who have made it to the lowest floor. Guess there's nothing to worry about after all. The floor finally rumbles and a huge man alongside his mage enters. He has a big mark on one eye and his hair looks as if it was cut during an earthquake, and he introduces himself in style. He announces that he has come to kill the Black Dragon Queen and asks for permission to pass. The queen stands in hiding behind the walls as her army of 4 moves forward to light. The first one to clash is Wulku, who transforms into a muscular monster from his little cutesy figure. He mocks Gold for being overstating. The opponents stand face to face, but Wool is feeling clever as he disappears in a swish and attacks the man from behind. But alas, the man grabs Wool and smashes him onto the ground, clearly offended by his remarks. Harpy rescues Wool before he is struck by the sword. It's time for the second fight now. A second round of intense slashing goes on between Mino and Gold now, and the soldiers remain undefeated as they are stronger than any dungeon boss Gold has ever fought. However, Gold is not the one to back off and this epic clash with Mino continues. The 2 giants going up against one another have managed to crack the dungeon ceiling. A huge stone comes hurling at Sylvia and everyone stands there frozen as Sylvia is too frail to dodge it smoothly. But worry not, as Savior Van is here. He carries Sylvia bridal style, whom he has met for the second time. For a moment, it seems like a romantic scene from a cheesy fantasy movie. The entire dungeon population collectively gasps, not because of the impending battle, but because their Dragon Queen was burning with jealousy. Nothing like a love triangle to spice up a dungeon raid. The Dragon Queen gets so furious that her dark aura makes all the monsters in the vicinity tremble. Van is still holding on to the mage and can't seem to figure out the reason behind Ryuka's rage. Well, the reason is your hands, but you can't seem to let her go. He puts the mage down and gently goes up to Ryuka as the soldiers fight Gold. He uses various hand gestures to figure out what's wrong, but all in vain as she just stands there pouting. She even rejects a meat pie that Van brought, and well, that is a surprise. In the midst of the emotional chaos, Gold assumes Van is on his side and kindly asks him to step aside, thinking he won't be able to handle the final boss. To Gold's bewilderment, Van casually strolls over to the monster's side, revealing his intention to take on the mighty legendary man Gold himself. To clear up confusions, Van lets Gold know that Obsidian is his childhood friend. Gold is unable to figure out the unusual friendship. However, he has no problem in fighting the strong as he is always ready. Gold swings his sword and releases a powerful magical blast that can even disintegrate mountains. Van moves his arm smoothly and disintegrates the magical blow in a matter of seconds. Gold comes forth with a second attack, and this time he uses the ground too. But Van, with his inhumane powers, stops the huge sword by using his fingers only. He goes on to punch Gold and thrashes him on the ground, but acts like he did it with his sword. Gold lies helplessly on the ground, questioning whether Van has become this strong. Well, in his defense, he has been visiting Ryuka every month for 10 years now, and each time he has had to defeat monsters on all of the 100 floors. Ryuka blushes when Van mentions her again and answers Gold's repetitive questions. According to Van, Ryuka's normal now for some reason, so he should take a chance. He grabs the meat pie he brought and stuffs it in her mouth. All the monsters are in awe of the cute moment as Van keeps feeding her pies, while Gold just stands there because what the heck is going on? This is not what he expected. So a mere boy has overwhelmed the legendary man, and the queen keeps eating pies, and the 4 crazy monsters have bright smiles on their faces. What in the dungeon is going on? We guess it can never be understood. A sudden realization hits the monsters that Sylvia isn't healed or buffed Gold-san yet, so the real fight might have yet to begin. But what happens next is quite surprising. Gold lies in Sylvia's lap as she caresses his head. The man is kinda embarrassed, but Sylvia knocks it off, saying that the people they are around are not dangerous. The monsters are clearly worried for a little girl like Sylvia, and they are about to attack Gold for that. However, Sylvia assures them and announces that they are a couple. Even though there seems to be a huge age gap between them, they are actually both 35 years old. They even have a 16-year-old daughter. She has always been traveling with them since he has always been an eager adventurer. Getting carried by Van brought up past memories for Sylvia, but what she says next is the cherry on top. Gold and Sylvia have been childhood friends for 30 years. This is where the monsters lose it. They become even more delusional after seeing a married couple of childhood friends. The four idiots have found their utopia. Mino-san thanks Gold-san and tells him that he is the real winner because he has won in life. With a tear in his eye, or maybe it's just dust from the dungeon ceiling, he continues with his little speech of excitement. Apparently, marrying a childhood friend and having a kid is the dungeon equivalent of hitting the jackpot. Sylvia does a little celebration, but Gold can't possibly accept a win like this with the big fat ego of his. Sylvia goes up to the Dragon Queen and lets her know that she will be rooting for her. Ryuka pretends as if she doesn't know what Sylvia is talking about, but it is so obvious. It's finally time for the guests to leave, and the monsters are expecting to hear some stories the next time they come by. But Gold isn't having any of it. He's planning to take them all down when he visits again. After they leave, Ryuka shyly thanks Van and he just acknowledges it nonchalantly, and begins talking about his pies. After their departure, Ryuka shyly thanks Van, who acknowledges it with a casual nod and immediately shifts the conversation to his pies. But then Van, in a moment of profound pondering, wonders if he and Ryuka will be like Gold and Sylvia when they grow up. Ryuka blushes and the monsters swoon, but Van is just talking about being friends forever. He's not ready for Dungeons and Diapers. The legendary man and Sylvia have decided to stay back in the town for a few days as the town's reputation is going to skyrocket for now. Van and the duo become friendlier as the townsfolk are impressed by Van's connections. Mino is meditating in a certain dungeon to get stronger. Fire burns all around Mino as he tries his best to clear his mind. Van is peacefully enjoying playing his cards when Ryuka asks a question out of nowhere. She asks him about the training regimen, which definitely doesn't sound like her. Mino asks her to indirectly get this information for him. Her ego is just too big to do it himself, and also because, sitting around is not Mino's style, especially after that near disaster the other day when Van swooped in to save the day. As for Van's regimen, visiting the dungeon is a kind of training in itself, and he also practices swordsmanship on top of a mountain near his hometown. Gold-san also trains in the mountains, and that is how he met Sylvia. Van also used to meditate a lot in his mountainous hometown. This is the best method to clear one's mind. So now, all monsters will train in their own ways, and Mino goes to the mountain to meditate. Monster Succubus is seen walking there with her shoulders lowered as she has failed in a mission yet again. She sneaks up on Mino-san to see what he's doing. He is trying to meditate, but he keeps thinking about Lady Dragon Queen and Vano-kun. They should have gotten married already. The succubus and Mino start talking as she lists down her worries, thinking of herself as a failure. Mino tells her about the goblins on the first floor who have a win rate of only 10%, and about the queen's policy of never killing others or harming way too much even though they are in a world-leading dungeon. So according to Mino, Saki-san is doing just fine for now. He should also let his delusion soar by imagining his favorite couple together, and that would make his spirit soar. After a few days, all the monsters reunite and they have all gotten stronger. Well, at least they think so. Ryuka asks Van to confirm if they are actually stronger, but they are just using peculiar methods to feel better. The four idiots went back to normal, and Saki-san became a splendid decoy for monsters by using Mino's advice. Van and Ryuka are hanging out when they start searching for some snacks. Kyuji-san made some delicious puddings and left them in a treasure box with a snack sign nearby. Van finds the box sus as it is way too big for snacks. However, Ryuka hurries and is dragged all the way inside upon opening the box, and Van goes in after her too. They have been trapped inside the box. It was a trap created by the monsters called the Mimic Chest. Unless the ones trapped inside pass the designated condition, they cannot leave. So now everyone gets their tea and sits around the chest to listen to Van and Ryuka's adventure. But wait, this isn't all. Harpy has done something disgusting. The condition written on the wall is that the people inside cannot get out until they do something that is comprised of 3 letters. The word is censored, and Harpy hid the fact from everyone except Wool. Harpy is going crazy outside and awaits for some action while the duo inside cannot figure out the word with 3 characters. They start playing a game of rock, paper, scissors to throw random guesses for the words. That is when Harpy wonders, when did they become such degenerates? The other monsters ask her not to group them with herself, and rightfully so. While Ryuka thinks of something, Van gets reminded of the time they were trapped before as well. It was when they were taking little Ryuka home and they were trapped in a storm. They hid inside a tree to protect themselves from the storm and cried as hard as they could. Once the storm was over, they got to see the clear, beautiful, starry sky. All the monsters feel heartwarmed listening to the cute story. Ever since taking over the dungeon, Ryuka has not been able to visit outside. Van suggests that they should find someone to take care of the dungeon for her, and then they can go outside and see the stars again. The monsters cannot believe they got such a cute result from a very filthy plan, but hey, at least they know. And suddenly the treasure opens. The boy mistook their conversation for a pillow talk, a 3-syllable word, and opened up. The monsters are panicking, but glad that everything worked out. However, Ryuka isn't going to let all this slide and traps the 4 of them inside the treasure for revenge. Yet another day at the dungeon, and the monsters are sitting around the table plotting something yet again. They are discussing their previous tricks and providing justification for their actions. They then begin fighting and scream out things like handcuffs and love potions. The maid shows up with some black tea and offers air to the monsters. She also hears their precious conversations and offers to bring up love potions and handcuffs too, but the monsters refuse it straight away. Maid-san is kind of scary, but just like everyone else, she also gets shy around Ryuka. Maid-san is a golem made out of clay and has been working in the dungeon since Ryuka was a child. She is a very talented maid who can cook, clean, and do the laundry pretty well. She is also blessed with a keen power of observation, so she considers herself a better plotter than all of the monsters combined. She was created by Orc-kun's subordinate, so she considers him her master and the forefather. Orc straight up denies the allegations, claiming that he is only 26, but the maid couldn't care less as she continues calling Orc Gramps, and that is hurtful to him. Maid also discusses Van and Ryuka's relationship and admits that she will be the happiest if they get together. But there is one thing that worries her, and that is the monsters. They are spying on their best friends 24/7, which is very concerning. The maid takes her leave, and the scene cuts to Ryuka and Van. They are playing chess, and it's gotten very late because of how fired up they got. Van's stomach is growling, so he decides to leave early. That is when Ryuka asks him to stay for dinner. Maid-sama brings out her stash of deliciously made food, and they begin enjoying it. She has this look on her face that says she's cooking up something. As the duo begin eating, the maid interrupts Van to let him know that Ryuka has sauce on her face and that he should lick it off for her. Ryuka spits out all the food she stuffed in her mouth, and Van's face is covered now. The maid is unstoppable though. She says that Ryuka loves Van-sama out loud, and the boy just sits there cluelessly. Ryuka's doubt goes straight to the monsters and calls them out on their silly gimmicks. The monster denies the allegations, but Ryuka assures them that she will not beat them up. She asks them to have dinner together while she still scolds them. Maid-sama is also invited to the dinner table, but she has no need for food or drinking. Seeing Ryuka eat is enough for her to feel full. How cheesy of them all. The family of weirdos is having dinner together when the maid interrupts once again, asking if she should prepare for Van as well from now on. But Van decides as he would not burden the dungeon for no reason. He offers to go out and bring his own bento daily, but the monsters refuse this time. Getting beat up 1 time a day is enough for them. In the end, they all compromise and decide to have dinners 2 times daily. The dungeon's matchmaking party is finally here. Monsters and creatures from all floors are here, and so are Ryuka's 4 special soldiers. They are here to find partners so they can get real-life romance experience. Harpy is on the front lines to find herself a man. The event set up for singles could definitely help the lonely monsters out there. The Dragon Queen comes out for a brief cameo and hopes that everyone meets someone wonderful. She leaves as soon as she appears. She is not good with social events, so she's headed back to read a book in her room. She is the most relatable dragon ever. Mino starts choking even to the thought of getting involved in romance, and the remaining 2 opt to pass too. Harpy is pissed off at the bunch of worthless men and goes into the party with full confidence. She will learn all about adult romances, and with some experience, she will get the childhood best friends together as well. There is no stopping Harpy. Couples have already started forming here and there, and Harpy just sits there making an elegant pose, hoping for someone to approach her. Wool is worried as usual, so he comes to check up on Harpy, who, in his eyes, just seems burnt out sitting there. Things are not going as per her imagination. She meets a lot of her underlings, which is demoralizing for her. A conversation seems to be going well with a cat, but he backs off too when he hears Van's name. Van has traumatized the entire dungeon by beating them up daily. A series of similar failures later, Harpy's spirit is crushed and he seems to be leaving the party. Wool follows her, but she just hides in a corner to spy over the couples holding hands already. A bunch of skeletons are seen pestering a young lady. Lich-sama and his undead gang from the 40th floor are causing trouble and acting haughty, just because they are considered as a bit upper-class monsters. According to Lich, he is the epitome of monster manhood. The 3 things that an ideal monster man needs are magic, income, and some backbone. And he's got them all. This is the chance for ladies to get married into luxury. But the audience thinks otherwise, since these men are nothing but bone. No sane human or sane monster would buy their lies. That is when Harpy makes her grand entrance. Her dark and menacing energy makes the skeletons shudder. All of their bones are rattling as they have only felt the sensation before from Van. At the end, she says out loud that her income is much more than them, and Wool is left surprised at her word statement. All the ladies that Harpy protected from the weirdo come forward to thank her, and suddenly Harpy's the coolest person in the room. Compliments are flooding in continuously, and Harpy cannot help but blush. Wool sits there and admires Harpy from the corner of the room as the skeleton men surround him and keep crying from the humiliation. Harpy realizes that there is one thing she has learned in life, and that is when it comes to love or anything else, you have to be yourself. Embracing your quirks is the key. As for Van and Ryuka, they are good at being themselves, so she doesn't have to worry about them. Now, it's time for Harpy to light up the night for her own feathery way. She drinks, she sings, and she creates a mess, a party animal in the truest sense. And as the dust settles, the monsters remind her that damages will hit her pocket. Harpy, ever the financial genius, is just glad her salary can cover the mess. After all, she's just a silly little birdie in the grand scheme of dungeon love. A peculiar new monster has appeared in the dungeon. It appears to be an extremely strong monster with an armor-like appearance. Is it a new friend or a foe? A day ago, Wool-kun comes up to Ryuka and Van to inform them about messed up work shifts. There are no monsters scheduled for work in the beginner area except Goblin-san. Even though Goblin-san thinks he's a pro at handling disturbances, it is still way too dangerous to leave him alone. All the other monsters are busy, and the boss level monsters cannot be seen revealing their powers this early. The next day, Goblin-san is seen worrying about handling duties all by himself, even though he confidently refused any help. Suddenly, a rookie monster appears in front of him to help him out. The management has figured out a helper, but who is it behind the armor? It is Van taking over monster duties for a day to help out Gob-san. He has hidden himself completely in armor and introduces himself as Pan. Apparently, he is a half-man, half-goat monster. Oh wait, enough with the introductions as a bunch of adventurers have crashed the party. As Gob-san plans the first attack for them, Pan goes forward and thrashes the entire bunch, completely overpowering them. The adventurers run away, but Gob-san is not pleased. He is rather angry at Pan for being an idiot. Turns out there's a hierarchy of adventure beating etiquette. A-level adventurers get a fair fight, B and C-level adventurers get the kiddie pool treatment. That is because they can sustain their injuries at a higher level. Gob-san is pissed, but he's willing to teach the newbie. A new duo of B-level adventurers have shown up who will be allowed up until level 30. An Oscar-worthy performance begins as Gob-san acts dumb and lets the adventurers beat him up. Pan has to follow him and do the exact same thing. Both of them get defeated and the adventurers pass. Gob-san warns Pan about the legendary man Gold and the weird guy with dead eyes, Van. They are the exceptions, and everyone in the dungeon has to fight them, and all the monsters have to use the maximum powers to meet their level. Pan is handed over a bunch of difficult tasks and adventurers to deal with in a small amount of time, and that is when he realizes how difficult the life of a monster is. Maybe even tougher than the lives of adventurers. However, Gob-san still appreciates him for being a quick learner and a promising rookie. But the day's drama isn't over, as the legendary Manny Gold shows up at the dungeon. He heard about the new monster Pan and couldn't help himself, so he visited to fight. Pan and Goblin act weak as usual as Gold smashes through them in one go. But Gold is not satisfied as he can feel Pan is masking the true power. He does not go right through the lower dungeon level. Pan is confused, so the Goblin lets him know that the fight is all about making the opponent feel satisfied in their win. So Pan goes all out and a good fight goes down. Gold finally leaves with Sylvia when he is done, but still dissatisfied. He does not understand the reason why Pan is limiting himself, but he leaves anyway. Gob-san is very impressed by the rookie monster's abilities and offers him a job placement in the lower floors, but Pan denies, of course. Later that day, Pan sits down contemplating a promising future as a monster or even a VTuber. The dungeon is always here for him, and so is the internet. After fighting together with Gob-san, Van has changed completely. He fights carefully and makes sure not to harm anyone or break down the dungeon walls. He still breaks through everyone, but without causing any harm or fear amongst the monsters. Another day, and Van arrives to the dungeon once again. He is acting very out of character as he greets everyone and mentions that he's tired. Wool-kun and Harpy make an offer saying that he should just get a special path or a straight pass to 100th floor at this point. There is no reason to fight every single time. Van is delighted, but Mino-san doesn't agree. It is against the rules of the dungeon, and hence he takes out his huge sword to fight Van. Mino is enraged as he was entrusted this duty by the previous queen and cuts right through Van. Van doesn't dodge and stands there in two pieces. The four monsters are shocked and panicking until Van changes his voice. Van commands that it is their duty to protect Ryuka from all outside threats at all costs. They shouldn't give a pathetic show like this ever again. Van's body transforms into a majestic lady. The previous queen is here, and she is extremely angry at her elite team of 4 soldiers. She wants to train them once again as they are getting lousy. She goes inside to meet her daughter and spots Van Sirius over there too. Rin is delighted to see her daughter and wants to have a nice little chat with her. Ryuka's father wasn't brought along for two reasons. Number one is that he will not agree to leave once he comes to the dungeons, and the second one is that he has meetings to tend to. Ryuka's mother is particularly worried about her daughter's relationship with Van. They are just childhood friends, but a monster-human friendship is very problematic. When the next Demon King arrives and humans begin fighting monsters to extremes, there is nothing that these friends will be able to do. The Abysmal Monarch Rind Obsidian has not yet approved of Van's friendship with her daughter. Her powers are almost on par with the Demon King's, and Van has to fight her and win in order to keep meeting Ryuka. The dungeon space is too cramped, so the queen extends it to a territory to fight freely. She is angry for some reason and doesn't hesitate in launching her first attack. Her tail becomes python-like huge and spread over the entire area, but Van doesn't even flinch. The queen's hands have transformed too, and she asks the brat to come at her. Van stands resolute and pulls out his sword with the same dead look in his eyes. He attacks relentlessly and manages to cut off a portion of the queen's tail. Van uses a weird technique called self-taught sword style, which makes the queen question him. Van is messing with the technique names, and when he finally gets to the queen's head, he is in a superb position to attack, so he backs off. Van is holding back and underestimating the queen, which pisses her off. Her head transforms too, and she releases a fireball from her mouth, which Van smoothly deflects with his sword. The queen tries to blackmail him by using Ryuka's name, as he won't get to meet her after losing, but Van's confidence is not something to mess with. And he has also promised Ryuka to never kill as per the dungeon's policies. On the other hand, Rin's meeting with Ryuka is still going on as she talks to a clone of her own mother. Both Ryuka and Van speak of the same morals and policies of not killing, which is proof that there won't be any problems even when the Demon King shows up. Van cannot kill his childhood friend's mother either because that will make Ryuka sad. So the queen levels up her powers to test Van once again. She cannot believe that a random boy is talking down on the Abyss Queen. That is when Van unleashes a unique swordsmanship style as well. This time he manages to slash through the ground and reaches for the queen's arm by standing on one of the pieces flying from the ground. He holds the queen's arm and tightens his hold on it. The queen can no longer move her body and she begins panicking. Van has reached a level of power where he not only controls his own mana, but also can influence the mana of the people surrounding him. The queen acknowledges defeat and asks Van to release his grip. Van is in his own world thinking about his word techniques, so the queen has to shout at him to release her hand. She wanted a final confirmation to see if Van is ready to face future threats, but he is more than ready. Ryuka realizes that she was talking to a clone the entire time and angrily goes to meet her mother. She has never liked Van, but Ryuka's father has always been very fond of him. The queen also makes a third clone to train her elite soldiers and badly beats them all up. There is no time for her to leave as she bids farewell to her dungeon family. The king must be waiting for her, but she warns everyone about the great hero before leaving. He is the one to watch out for. She asks Ryuka and Van to get along before leaving, and the elite monsters take it as a signal for the future son-in-law. They let their delusions soar as the best friends engage in a small chat. Deep in the dungeons, Ryuka and Van are playing a new game of cards. They are summoning different heroes with different power levels, and all of them are from real life. The four monsters stand in the background and call the game weird and bad from time to time. Van summons the legendary man Gold and thinks he has won the match when Ryuka pulls out an unmatchable card. She summons the great hero and is ultimately on top. Van just ruffles the cards and makes them fly here and there while calling the game bad simultaneously. He cannot accept defeat, so he ruins the game. They begin discussing the great hero, and his stupidity increases levels of strength. That is when Mino comes through calling out for danger. Has the great hero arrived in actuality or what? Orc-kun clarifies that it's a monster attack from another dungeon. They go around working arrogantly in the lower level floors as all the monsters there evacuate. They want the dungeon executives to come out. They come across Succubus-san, who is their old fellow. They were kicked out of the dungeon for being weak. The horse-faced monster mocks her as well as the dungeon. Succubus in return calls him a mean, immature, horse-faced virgin, which offends him a lot. He tightens his fist to punch the succubus, but Mino-san comes to defense before he could do so. He punches the horse face and sends him flying away for threatening his precious comrade. Succubus-san blushes and asks Mino out for dinner in the middle of nowhere. Orc-kun shows up as well, and apparently he knows the monsters. They are from the greatest dungeon in the nearby country. They are the Ogre's 4 Heavenly Knights. They are here to show their powers to the Black Dragon Queen Ryuka. Their own master has been overthrown by the great hero, and now they think that only the Dragon Queen is worthy of being their master. They've even brought standees and posters for the Dragon Queen. Now that is some K-pop level stands right there. Both monster groups begin fighting over the title of the Queen's biggest fans. Harpy and Co. consider themselves the official fans because they have custom goods from the Queen. Harpy even owns the Queen's previous nightgown. Van and Ryuka just watch the weird fight going down. Both the monster groups stand face to face as the duel begins to determine the Queen's worthy subordinates. Van doesn't interfere as of now because Ryuka trusts the abilities of her subordinates. But still, if it comes down to it, Ryuka would live if Van wipes out the opponent's monsters entirely. A battle of simps is about to go down between Worm Hell and Ogre Organs. The maid is our host for today, and she will be conducting the event. There are 8 monsters who are about to clash over their love for Lady Dragon Queen. Their fight will determine the Dragon Queen's new worthy subordinates. The maid introduces all the 8 fighters. The dungeon's own group is named Forever Idiots, composed of Harpy-san, Wolkun, Orkun, and the Captain Mino-san. The second group is the Heavenly Rulers, composed by Gura-san, Pork-san, Katsi-kat, and Uni-san. All of them look like models and directors and can make the Queen a world-renowned idol. All the monsters from all the dungeon levels are present in the audience. Mino is determined to prove that their opponents are a bunch of fanboys who can never protect the Queen. Lady Dragon Queen is the judge present in human form for the day. The Heavenly Rulers start bawling at the sight of her. It's the best day of their lives. Van is hiding under the table because he is worried about the 4 soldiers, and so is Ryuka. Each match will consist of 3 events, and the team to win 2 matches first will be the winner. The maid announces the first match that will be the Fan Art Showdown. Both of the groups have to make portraits of Lady Dragon Queen, and the Queen will decide the winners herself. Mino finds the entire battle stupid because he wanted the test to be on their combat skills. However, the maid tells him to take a chill pill as this method is much more fair. A fight would end way too quickly. The time limit is 1 hour and the first match begins. Team Heavenly Rulers is pretty confident and way too quick, while the Forever Idiots just stand there still. The speed of Heavenly Rulers is staggering, and they are down in the blink of an eye. They are no strangers to creating fan art and present their impressive masterpieces. The Unicorn has turned the Dragon Queen into a bunny in his fan art, which is a testament of his love for the Queen. The Queen evaluates the art and gives them a heart, saying that she likes it. The Heavenly Rulers start bawling once again, and this enrages the Forever Idiots, who begin working on their art aggressively. The first 3 drawings of their side are ready, but they look like something drawn by a 3-year-old. The Queen is not impressed at all. It is time for Captain Mino to do something, as the opponents have already started to mock them. Mino thinks of his favorite couple, and suddenly his brush is flying. He puts all the passion onto the canvas and prepares a steamy masterpiece of Valkyne and the Queen. Mino's drawing can turn around the competition, but wait. Harpy ruins the entire painting with her aggressive nosebleed. She can't contain her excitement at the sight of the painting and faints to the floor. The first round belongs to the Heavenly Rulers. After a humiliating defeat in round 1, it is about time for a second fight. Harpy-san is down after some self-destruction, so the Forever Idiots will now have to fight as a group of 3. In this round, the groups will have to face adventurers and collect their mana. Their focus will be doing as little harm as possible to the adventurers. The audience is sure the Forever Idiots have got this one. Uni-san from the Heavenly Rulers thinks that the opponents have an unfair home field advantage, so he offers Succubus-san, a loser in his eyes, as a replacement for Harpy-san. Succubus thinks that she stands no chance against her former subordinates, but Mino-san is pretty confident in her abilities. Everyone motivates Saki-san while her former subordinates try their best to make a joke out of her. Thanks to that, Saki is now motivated to prove them wrong. Orc and Wool will be working behind the scenes, while Mino and Saki will be on the front lines to collect mana. The audience will be watching the progress through a crystal screen. 2 adventurers show up to the lower level, and instead of fighting, Mino and Saki begin acting. The adventurers quickly realize the Succubus and Minotaur, and apparently they are breaking up. Back with the audience, Harpy-san is there to explain. She had healed pretty quickly. Orkun's specialty is explaining, and he is down working with the group. This is a situation when the boyfriend gets mad, and that leads to a breakup. Out of nowhere, Saki-san's ex, Wolkun, shows up. He mocks Saki for being a stupid woman, who is about to be dumped for the 2nd time. This angers Mino-san, who punches the ex with all his might. He asks Saki to not ponder over her ex's words. Saki is confused at the sudden shift in behavior, but Mino's a very good guy at heart, so they catch up again. The act is low-key confusing, but it has worked. Mana has started to flow from one of the adventurers, who has found the act heart-touching. But the second armored adventurer doesn't find the act emotional. It was rather embarrassing seeing the looks on the actors' faces. Ooh, a close miss. The adventurers figured out the act, and the opponents couldn't be happier. Saki begins crying, but Mino comforts her. Her heart flutters as she is being comforted by Mino, even in such dire circumstances. Seeing the face of Saki in love, the adventurers cannot help but feel overwhelming emotions. Their mana begins flowing at an absurd rate, and the Team Forever Idiots have made it. Oricun's explanation power has worked. Uni-san from the opponent group can still not get over the look on Saki's face. It was that of a maiden with her first love, but that should be impossible for a succubus. However, Harpy announces that Saki is a virgin and Uni's head starts hurting. He can't believe it, but he might have liked Saki the entire time. Now it's time for the Heavenly Rulers to go up against Van-kun. They underestimate and mock Van for having no mana, but they have no idea about the horror that awaits. The Heavenly Rulers are defeated in no time as Van goes all out on them. Both teams stand equal in points now, and it's time for the final 1v1 battle. Mino-san and Uni-san are about to engage in the battle that will determine the Queen's new subordinates. However, there's a twist. Wool and Goro will be participating in the Lady Dragon Queen quiz. Each correct answer will grant the fighters one blow on the opponent team. The maid begins asking the burning quiz questions. The first question is about what the present Lady Dragon Queen received from her father on her 5th birthday. And surprisingly, Goro-san answers it quicker than Wool. This grants Uni-san an opportunity to deliver a blow on Mino's face that hits harder than a truck. The questions keep coming and Goro keeps answering with the speed of light. He has memorized the Lady Dragon Queen Encyclopedia, an official fan book created by Harpy. The maid published it without Harpy's permission and now they're suffering. As the Forever Idiots are on the verge of giving up, a chance to strike back appears. The maid starts asking questions about a certain male friend, and we all know Wool is an expert on that. This grants Mino a few hits to release his anger as well. The Heavenly Rulers are unaware of the presence of any male friend. The final question comes up, which is whether the Queen has a boy that she likes. Wool answers a yes with full confidence, and the Heavenly Rulers are utterly destroyed. The Queen tries to deny it, but her shy explanation gives it away. All this time, Uni and his subordinates were hoping to date their idol, but all their hopes have now gone down the drain. Uni-san's nose starts bleeding and he begins sweating profusely, thinking that it should have been him instead of some other boy. Just when the Forever Idiots think that they have won, Uni-san goes into destruction mode. He was just having a meltdown, but he is good at switching up quickly. He is not backing down without a final fight. Uni-san starts swinging and hits Mino with unmatched anger and squishes his face. This leads to an automatic disqualification from the tournament, but Mino asks the maid to stop the announcement. Mino insists on continuing the fight, and Uni accuses the Queen of betraying her fans. She has a crush on a boy, which apparently isn't allowed. Both the monsters hit each other with a flurry of punches. Mino hits back at Uni by saying that his idea of standing an idol is selfish and weird. Uni questions the official fanbook and states that the Queen exists for the world to worship. Any male presence near her should be eliminated. Amidst the punches and insults, Mino angrily questions Uni's delusion about having a chance with the Queen. Uni, lost in dreams of a single queen for a decade, doesn't answer, probably too busy planning their imaginary wedding. Mino begins acting like a protective father and scolds the Heavenly Knight for their wired-out idea of staining the Queen. In their defense, they turned out this way because their previous boss had emotionally and physically drained them. All that boss wanted was to kill adventurers and gain more mana, so hearing about a dungeon boss with a no-killing policy, a gentle and kind heart, turned them into fans immediately. Mino asks them to stop their little sob story because he can never see eye to eye with them. The monster of Worm's Hell are the protectors of the Queen, and that's all they have ever wanted to do. They will never mind the Queen crushing over someone or even getting married. That is when Uni realizes how wrong he has been all along. The Queen already has all the protectors she needs. Uni feels ashamed, but Mino reassures him and appreciates his incredible fan art. The issue had been resolved and the audience is happy and satisfied with the win of Forever Idiots. It's time for the Queen to address the Heavenly Knights. She begins talking to Uni, who is hyperventilating because the Queen is very close to him. He could never be a successful protector even if he tried because he'd be fanboying the entire time. The Queen doesn't even punish the Knights and makes the Ogre Organs a division of her own dungeon. A level 45 Inferno is chosen as the new boss and the kingdom rejoices. By gaining control of the Ogre Organs, the dungeon's influence has grown significantly. This means more and more adventurers coming in and more paperwork ultimately. The Queen and the 4 boss monsters are surrounded by heaps of paperwork, and everyone is so done because the work is endless. Harpy wants some sort of a magical device that can help with all the work, but that is technically impossible. Now, the next big problem is a dungeon evaluation from the adventurer's perspective. A suggestion box on the floor might help, but the adventurers will hardly ever fill it because it sounds too shady. Van comes in and instantly recognizes that something's wrong with the monsters because they're not their usual cheerful selves. Ryoka explains the situation, but Van's always present for the rescue. He has brought along meat pies and gives Ryuka a good massage. Ryuka mentions the dungeon feedback and Van disappears in a second. He goes out and asks the guild adventurers for dungeon reviews. He comes back with all sorts of weird feedback. Van and Ryuka sit together to go through the feedback, and the monsters are back to gushing over their favorite couple. There are all sorts of reviews ranging from the staircase fixing to some strange requests, including Gold asking for a new dungeon floor to fight Van and Sylvia fangirling over her husband. After working non-stop for hours, their best friend duo is done with the work. They get up to do something else now, but the queen dozes off while walking. Van carries her bridal style and tucks her into the bed. Van is also tired, so he leaves the dungeon right after. Ryuka accidentally oversleeps, but she wakes up to see her 4 monster guards frozen. They have been in shock since yesterday. Van loves bringing over treats, and Gusan, the maid, loves cooking for Ryuka. And Ryuka loves eating, so she keeps munching on food thoughtlessly. She doesn't realize it until her usual clothes stop fitting her. She has to wear a big skirt to cover up her thighs. The monsters find the change in attire very unusual. That is when the ladies take the queen aside to discuss something very weird. However, they quickly figure out that the queen has gained weight. Harpy tries to reassure her that thick thighs are trendy nowadays. But Gusan is sensible and suggests the queen try out dieting, because she might become obese at that rate. However, Harpy doesn't gain weight and Gusan is made of clay, so they have no dieting tips whatsoever. Orc-kun overhears the conversation and comes forward with his suggestions. Ryuka asks for a magical device to lose weight quickly and easily, but Orc begins scolding her. There are no shortcuts around dieting. His hometown is famous for training warriors, so he knows that frequent exercise and strict dietary management are the keys to losing weight. Orc-kun had already predicted a situation like this, so he created a gym out of one of the dungeon traps. The queen is determined to shave the extra pounds off, but the climbing and warped wall proved to be way too easy for her. She doesn't even break a sweat, let alone burn some calories. Upon hearing the word calories, the queen goes down to one of the warmer dungeon floors to breathe out some fire. But her fire-breathing calorie blaster technique only terrifies the monsters, and that's all. Upon hearing about Ryuka's rampage, Van shows up to check on her. Ryuka is very embarrassed because the person she wanted to hide her weight from has come to know about her secrets. However, Van couldn't care less and suggests Ryuka running. Running is a pain for Ryuka, but maybe with Van by her side, it might become a little more bearable. After all, it's his fault for bringing countless snacks just to make the queen happy. This is the story of a certain party with a member X in it. X is weaker in comparison to his members, and they put him down all the time. Hence, he is banished from the party Dogfang. Twist, Hope, and Zeru are his fellow B-class members, who have made it to the 22nd floor so far. Gobson and Pan-kun, that is Van in his armor, are watching the scene from a secret spot. Pan-kun is fascinated by party banishment because he has only seen it happen in Ryuka's books. Gobson also thinks that it is a weird setting for abandoning a party member. X is heartbroken and keeps asking his members to not abandon him. However, his members think that their skill gap is way too much, and that X is nothing more than a burden. X also recognized his weaknesses, and that is why he started maintaining support and doing chores like cooking. Pan and Gobson pity his sad position, but his party is way too adamant on leaving him. However, Zeru gives X a chance to prove his strength by bringing the dark crystal from the 30th floor. He will let X back on this condition, but it's impossible. X cries his heart out, but he still grabs his sword and goes out into the dungeon. X overthrows Pan and the goblin in anger and leaves for the next floor. Pan refers to his books once again and thinks that X will now aim for revenge. But wait, his party members seem extremely sad and disappointed. They think that they are holding X back from his true potential, so leaving him on his own is the best option. It's a huge twist in the story, and what's sadder is that Zyro is his childhood friend and Pan-kun can't handle such a separation. In an instant, Pan is out to bring X and Gobson along, with his fellow holding back the remaining members. Pan-san finds X crying and fighting on the 30th floor. X wants revenge from Zyro now, and Pan is having a hard time detaining him. Zyro, on the other hand, can't even handle the goblins because he's too weak without X, or maybe that's just his negative mindset. Pan-kun brings X and threatens him for thinking about revenge on a childhood friend. That is when Zyro steps in to save his best friend. X is shocked to see Zyro and his fellow step in for him. The group finally talks it out and gets together. Gobson is impressed by Pan-kun's ability to resolve fights, but little does he know that Van and Ryuka have full-blown fights over meat pies almost every day. For the first time in many years, Van is taking a rain check from his daily meetup with Ryuka. She is disappointed because she wanted to play a new game, but it is what it is. Ryuka thinks that Van has been flaking out way too much recently, and she is kind of right. But Harpy is here to reassure her. She has known the boy for as long as she has known the queen. Van never misses out on meeting Ryuka, unless it's something very important. In his childhood, Van hid in the bags of adventurers and sneaked his way down to the 100th floor unnoticed. But then he had to fight the 4 monsters on the lowest floor. He was no match for them, so he had to fight for hours, and the fight would end when Van looked like he would lose consciousness. He would break down after every single fight, but would never lose the will to fight. The monsters felt bad for beating the snot out of Van every time, and they couldn't even communicate with him due to the rules. Though he cried many tears of frustration, Van became able to fight the monsters head-on by the age of 12. He cried again after defeating Orkun for the first time. Ryuka keeps listening to Harpy, and she realizes that Van never said a word to her. He always hid his pain just like boys always do. Van is out to bring some materials to the guild leader, and he heads out to the dungeon the next day. The guild leader gives him some meat pies to take along with him. Ryuka wordly comes up to Van and asks him to take care of himself, offers him cookies, and asks him to take a warm bath. Van asks her if she is his grandma because what is this behavior? Well, that is because Harpy exaggerated way too much and ended up lying to the queen. Van clears up all the lies, but the monsters did enjoy her being concerned for Van. Ryuka's book collection is really biased towards her preferences as per Gobson and Van, but that is what she enjoys. She loves books about cocky heroes getting destroyed. Even back in the town, everyone has a very negative perception of heroes. The bandana adventurer is bad-mouthing heroes while having his food, but he still fantasizes about the great hero. Goldson comes up to him to clear out the misconceptions. The heroes should not be generalized, just because some of them live in excessive luxury and are womanizers. Van is going to the dungeon once again, and he is thinking about the great hero's name Prominence, which he has surely heard somewhere. At the dungeon gate, a guy is standing still and he is all spaced out. Van calls out to him to see an extremely freaky expression on the guy's face. He has a wide, creepy smile and announces that he's going directly to the bottom of the dungeon. Van senses the unreal amount of mana surrounding him. He is way too speedy and clears the lower floors in one go. He is not aiming to kill, but Van should still wait for him to go to the lowest floors for a fight. The goblins open their encyclopedia to check this new adventurer's identity, and it's none other than the great hero. Panic wraps the entire dungeon as all the traps are raised to a maximum level. All the non-combatants evacuate as the great hero has arrived to fight the queen. The 4 monsters are also waiting for the new hero to arrive with their weapons. They are all scared to death, but don't let it show as it will bring their morale down. The hero arrives and so does Van-kun. Van removes the 4 monsters from his way in one swift sword movement and stands there resolutely pointing his sword to the great hero. The hero has the same freakish smile on his face and tells Van that he is the same as ever. The great hero introduces himself as Sora Prominence, and after some contemplation, Van realizes that he knows the great hero. It's his next-door neighbor, the crybaby, the snot-nosed named Pu Yan. He has not seen him in 5 years, so excitement takes over. Both boys begin gushing non-stop. That is when they stop for a second as they realize that the monsters are just staring at them with confusion. Van introduces a new childhood friend of his to the monsters. Well, you can never have too many of them. 10 years ago, Pu Yan was a weak child who was always getting bullied. Van and Ryuka always come to the rescue and play with him. Ryuka is always in her dragon form, so the neighborhood boys easily get scared of her. Both Pu Yan and Ryuka are unable to recognize each other because Pu Yan has grown a lot, and Ryuka has turned into a beauty according to him. Ryuka blushes and Van is clearly not happy with that. Pu Yan was done with being a loser, so he left the village 5 years ago to become an adventurer like Van. Naturally, he should have worked hard and become a hero, but nah. He found a sword in the middle of a forest imbued with a hero's power. Right then, a major incident was taking place at the capital. A cult released a sealed demon, and Pu Yan defeated it in just 2 seconds. And through such coincidences and careless events, he began to be hailed as the great hero. He is always wearing a smile to live up to the people's expectations, so his muscles kinda got stuck and now his face just looks freaky. Van thinks that it is the stress making him look like this because heroes are disliked a lot, but Pu Yan reassures them well. He is smiling genuinely today because he met his childhood friend. The moment seems wholesome, but Mino is very restless. He thinks that the great hero is up to some sort of trouble. He might create a rift between their cute duo. Pu Yan asks the duo if they have someone they like, and they of course deny it. However, Pu Yan does have someone he is in love with. Van and Ryuka get excited like little kids and decide to hear the complete story over dinner. But Pu Yan turns down the offer, as he is in a little bit of a hurry today. He is here to kill the Demon King's vessel, Ryuka-chan. Van looks as if his soul has been sucked out, and the 4 monster guards waste no time in coming forward to attack the great hero. Van's sword clangs with that of Pu Yan's as he asks for an explanation. Pu Yan says that he got an order to eliminate the Demon King's vessel, the Black Dragon Queen, and here he is. He had no idea that he would bump into his childhood friends before arriving here, but his life is all about crappy coincidences. As the great hero, he has to eliminate all of the demon's vessels even if he has to risk his life by fighting Van. Ryuka wastes no time to come forward and punch him in his face. The great hero is sent flying through a wall, but Ryuka is unusually calm and she doesn't feel bad for Puyon because he threatened to kill her. Van and Ryuka go out through the hole in the wall to fight. Ryuka's punch did not lead to even a single scratch on the great hero. Puyon says that it's no big deal as he keeps receiving punches like this all the time. And this is exactly why Van is worried. He cannot try to kill his childhood friend no matter what, so he is still non-serious. But the great hero launches his crazy and famous 2-second attack. Van and Ryuka are a bit startled, but Van wastes no time in going for a back attack. However, the great hero notices it and turns to break Van's sword into pieces using his own. Ryuka stops him from attacking again by holding his sword. A dragon's hide can withstand the scorching heat from the blade. Ryuka tries to smash the sword into pieces, but the sacred swords are a bit tough to break down. The great hero is already exhausted, so Van tells him to give up and not risk his life. But he asks Van to take the match seriously. Even though Van will just be using his hands now, he remains steadfast. The boys lock eyes and are about to begin with a second round of the fight. That is when the legendary man Gold makes his appearance. He digs his swords in between the two boys and asks Van to step aside as he has some serious business with the great hero. And the great hero stands there frozen, as he realizes that he is standing in front of the one and only, his future father-in-law. Van and Ryuka's eyes turn into hearts as they realize that Puyon's first love is the legendary man's daughter. All the monsters are in a frenzy as they worry about the terrible scenes in the lowest floor. All the greats, including the great hero, legendary man Gold, Van, and Ryuka, are in one place. However, in reality, the terrible scene is just a super awkward discussion going on the dinner table. The legendary man's daughter, Electra Moonsei, introduces herself and so does everyone else. Prominence, the great hero, nervously introduces himself as Gold stares him down. Ryuka mentions that he tried to kill her and things are getting so awkward that Mr. Freaky Face could die. The conversation turns super serious as Van and Prominence begin talking about the Demon King and his vessels. 10 years have passed since his defeat and he might be returning anytime soon, so it's the great hero's duty to eradicate all his vessels, including Ryuka. Gold interrupts the conversation with the most pressing question, which is about Electra's relationship. He couldn't care less about the world's fate or the Demon King. His family's fate comes first. Van hopefully turns to Ryuka, but she wasn't listening either. She is also thinking about Electra's cuteness and her relationship. It seems that everyone is in favor of Prominence and Electra's relationship. Electra herself loves traveling with the hero and accompanying him in his battles. Gold is getting angrier with every passing second, but there's nothing he can do when Van steps in to defend his enemy as well. As his childhood neighbor, Van can vouch for Puyon's good heart. He is a softie who has always loved flowers. Even Mino steps into Puyon's defense and says the great hero is a man worthy of Gold-san's daughter. But Gold cannot bring himself to like that cunning bastard, even though his wife likes him too. He wants to fight, but they call it a day at the end. Puyon apologizes to Van for saying and doing awful things. He leaves with Electra for the capital to give a report on Van and Ryuka. Sooner or later, the capital's heads will try to kill them, but when that happens, Puyon's promises to join Van's side. Both parties part ways happily, but the danger of the Demon King's arrival still looms. Wool calls a secret meeting, surprising everyone. Mino, still bothered by the hero's attack, thinks about its battle plans. He feels useless but vows to train harder if the hero returns. Instead, Wool surprises them. It's about the weird interests of some dungeon members, like the cow and bird's odd fixations. Wool teases Mino about his obsession with betrayals. Mino admits that he worries too much, and Orc jokes his mind is betraying him. Harpy insists on her cute thoughts, but Wool just points out her weird chatter. Wool, tired of the drama, says Mino's love obsession and Harpy's oddness are unwholesome. Orc wonders if forced submission could be wholesome, while the group continues bickering. Wool shares a story about two adventurers, where the girl gets into trouble and the boy saves her. Orc thinks it's a happy ending, but Wool says it's actually traumatic. Harpy agrees, calling Orc's tastes dark. Orc then mentions other monsters with strange interests, like Saki's obsession with tentacle bondage. Wool gets frustrated, wanting to clean up the dungeon. Harpy defends fetishes, saying they're about charm, and Wool can't deny it. The group shifts focus to Van and Ryuka, guessing they might have fetishes too. Wool refuses to believe it, thinking that they're pure. But as they check on Van and Ryuka in the library, discussing plans to ambush the great hero, Wool starts to wonder if he's wrong. The other insists they should observe more closely, as every little detail reveals hidden desires. The group notices Ryuka staring at Van's collarbone, and Wool insists it's a misunderstanding. Orc, however, sees nothing wrong with a collarbone fetish, and the group begins to wonder if the Lady Dragon Queen had some dirty thoughts. At the private bar later, Wool admits he might have been wrong. Everyone has a fetish, and it's not a bad thing. Orc jokes that morally righteous characters are secretly perverts. Wool shares that he finds it cute when the queen swishes her tail around. The group laughs, realizing they're all exposing their preferences. The next day, Van asks Ryuka why the others aren't around, just as the drunk executives show up. Wool compliments Ryuka's collarbone, and Harpy jokes about Van's possible fetish for cuddly things. Van denies liking violent fetishes, while Orc and Mino are busy throwing up back at the bar. Then, Mino introduces a game called Baki, where a group holds a stick in their mouths and eats together. The first to pull away loses. They force Van and Ryuka to play, even though the Dragon Queen protests. Van is quick, and the Baki is almost done when Ryuka snorts, making him pull away. Ryuka wins the game, but the battle continues. Van is heading to the lowest level of Worm's Hell to meet Ryuka, but he's not carrying a sword anymore. Mino and Harpy report this to the Dragon Queen, who asks if Van has been defeating enemies without one. Mino explains that Van's been unarmed for a while, but is still ridiculously strong. Wool wonders about the sudden change, while Ryuka guesses it's because Puyan broke his sword. Mino thinks it's just a phase, and Orc adds that no sword could withstand the great hero's sacred sword anyway. Ryuka has an idea. Maybe they should make Van a new super strong sword since he's earned it by reaching the lowest level so many times. The monsters agree, but Mina points out that there's no sword that matches a sacred sword. Orc knows a dwarf who can make the perfect sword, Dwao, a weapons specialist who also specializes in traps and golems. When the monsters summon him, they're surprised to see a golem show up instead of Dwao. The dwarf hops off the golem and introduces himself, acting like a mad scientist. Dwao proudly boasts about his weapon-making skills, though Van destroys his creations daily, vowing to take Dwao down someday. Wool wonders if they should trust him, since Dwao also makes the weapons for the defeated golems. Orc points out that Dwao doesn't know about Van and Ryuka's relationship, which Dwao insists is of no concern to him. Excited about the chance to make weapons for the legendary hero, Dwao eagerly agrees to join the sword-making committee. The group starts brainstorming. Mino's fanfiction-style drawing is quickly shot down by Ryuka. Wool suggests a sword that can withstand heat, and he and Gu come up with a wild idea. A sword with an ice cream hilt that releases cold air, made from ultra-cold ice. Harpy isn't impressed with the ice sword idea, and Dwao points out that it'll just melt. Gu suggests enchanting the ice to keep it frozen, and engraving a power enchantment for extra strength. Orc wonders if it'll work, but Ryuka thinks a high-frequency blade might be better. To demonstrate, Orc shows footage from the last battle with Van and Mino. Mino is ready to go all out with his enchanted battle axe, but Van easily defeated him, proving how strong he really is. Dwao and Orc argue over which legendary metal is best. Dwao insists on Mithril, while Orc defends Orchial Chum. This debate gets heated, and Gu chimes in, suggesting adamantite, but it doesn't settle anything. Frustrated, Ryuka asks why they don't just mix the metals. The idea is unheard of, but she suggests using the Black Dragon's scales and flames to create the alloy. Initially offended by the idea, Ryuka eventually agrees to help. The sword-making process begins. Ryuka provides her scales and flames, but the first attempts are a disaster. Despite the mistakes, they keep trying, fueled by their ambition and the desire to help their childhood friend. After several days, the sword is finally ready. Ryuka is eager to give it to Van, but her executives stop her. They have a great idea for how to present the sword, though their smirk suggests they might be up to something sneaky. Ryuka set up a new secret floor in the dungeon, calling it a special challenge. To enter, they must form a two-person party, and the floor is full of traps and hidden treasures. She's excited, thinking it's a fun dungeon date. Later, she appears in her adventurer outfit, bringing back memories of their childhood, while the monsters secretly watch. Things seem fine until the traps start going off, trying to kill them. Ryuka is shocked, but they rush to the exit, only to land in a slime trap that melts her clothes. She screams to get out, but the monsters are clearly enjoying the chaos. Luckily, only the top part of her clothes melts, and they can move on to the next obstacle, which requires teamwork. They use their heads and bodies to get through. The monsters' rom-com traps are working after all. Finally, they reach the end room, and Van spots the sword. Ryuka asks him to read the inscription, which says this sword will only be pulled out by two working as one. Together, they pull the sword out from its resting place. Ryuka happily tells him he can keep it, naming it the Azure Dragon Sword, or Blue Star. The monsters smile as they watch Ryuka and Van, but Dwao stays cautious. He points out that it's too soon to celebrate. Suddenly, loud bangs echo, and a golem named Ifrit appears. Duao explains that he used Ryuka's flames and leftover metal to create it, hoping it would finally defeat Van. Van jumps into battle, eager to test his new sword. As he swings it, he's impressed by how smoothly it moves and how perfectly it fits in his hand. The monsters watch nervously, unsure how Van will react mid-fight. Duao cheers from the sidelines. Van struggles a bit with controlling the shockwaves of the sword, but quickly figures it out. Combining a fist and sword, he delivers a powerful strike, severing the golem's head. The monsters are in awe, and Duao promises an even stronger golem next time. But the executives grow concerned. If the sword can do that to a golem, they might be in trouble. Ryuka asks Van for his thoughts, and he praises the sword enthusiastically. The monsters can't help but feel a little worried about how powerful Van's new weapon really is. When he spots an inscription from her, he teasingly asks if it's a grand gesture. Ryuka gets embarrassed and explains it's just because he's always unarmed. Van, being Van, jokes that he just wants to save money since he keeps breaking swords. The monsters smile at how sweet the moment is, but then Duao hands them the bill for the sword. It's ridiculously expensive, and the monsters quickly chase after him, demanding answers about the costs. In the royal capital of the Kara Kingdom, Puyan returns, greeted like a hero by some, while others eye him suspiciously, thinking he looks more like a villain. Electra, ever ready for a fight, offers to take care of the haters, but Puyan stops her. They have more important things to do, like reporting to the king. Upon arriving at the castle, they stand before the king, who welcomes them warmly. Kefid, the head of the Kingdom's 7 heroes, can already tell from Puyan's greeting that the mission to defeat the Black Dragon has failed. The other heroes are none too pleased, realizing this means a serious problem for them. The king, visibly upset, asks for the details. Puyan tells the whole story, which leaves everyone somber. The 7 heroes console him for having to fight his childhood friends. Even the king is moved to tears, apologizing repeatedly as it was never his intention for Puyan to face such a painful decision. The heroes know the Worm's Hell Dungeon is running under the radar, with thousands of monsters, but the real threat is Van. They realize that Van's strength matches Puyan's, making him a dangerous opponent. The Black Dragon's involvement with the prophecy of the Demon King only adds to the looming danger. Kefid insists they can't approach the Black Dragon as long as Van is around, but the king holds on to hope, asking Puyan to convince Van to join their side. Puyan shakes his head, knowing that it's impossible. Van would protect Ryuka at any cost. Puyan, resolute, declares he will protect his kingdom, even if it means fighting his childhood friends again. Kefid appreciates his determination and asks if he has any information that could make the upcoming battle easier. Just then, Electra jumps in, admitting that she can't bear to fight such nice people, making everyone pause and wonder if there's still a chance for peace. Electra, always one to lighten the mood, pulls out some Lady Dragon cookies and offers them to everyone. Before Kefid can protest, the king and the hero start munching away, enjoying the sweet treat. As they nibble, Kefid asks if Electra has any useful information about Van. Without missing a beat, she casually reveals that Van and Ryuka are in love. The room goes quiet. The king blushes, clearly taken aback by the idea of his hero in love, while Kefid grimaces internally. She, however, sees potential. Young love, she thinks, could be a weakness that they could exploit in the fight against Van. Puyan quickly jumps in to stop her, reminding everyone that a hero doesn't take advantage of someone's feelings. The other heroes agree, telling Electra not to ruin romance just because she doesn't understand it. But Electra brushes them off, insisting that heroes can do both, fight and enjoy romance, just like her and Puyan. Kefid, unimpressed, firmly states that she doesn't approve of their association. But Electra, unfazed, reveals that Ryuka even met her parents and called them a cute couple, causing an awkward silence. Puyan feels the heat of the room, now a little embarrassed. Even the king is rooting for them, but Kefid remains focused on the bigger picture, the return of the Demon King and the urgent need to defeat the Black Dragon. Kefid announces she's starting a top-secret investigation into Van and Worm's Hell Dungeon and asks everyone to prepare for battle. She also brings in the hero who defeated the previous Demon King from the west to boost their strength. As they leave the castle, Puyan follows Kefid, hoping to discuss Van and Ryuka's situation further. He tells her he's ready to fight, but pleads for a way to stop the prophecy without hurting either of his childhood friends. Kefid, however, says there's no way out without casualties, but she does have a condition. She pulls out pictures of 3 potential brides and tells Puyan to choose one. Electra, furious, jumps in, making it clear that she won't let this happen. Puyan just stands there speechless as everyone stares at the pictures, the tension rising. For ages, the Guardian Infernal Ogre ruled the 45th floor, but now his position is up for grabs. Monsters have gathered to choose a new boss. Van, dressed as Pan, was unexpectedly nominated by Cobb to represent the first floor. Reluctantly, he's part of the competition. Rich comments on his low level, but Wool sends him away, sparing Van from being exposed. Mino announces the first test: defeat a golem with A-rank strength, showing creativity and skill. Any damage means deductions. Dwao warns that breaking the golem will result in punishment. The monster executives watch closely, noting Rich's performance. Van just hopes to survive without causing a scene. Van, disguised as Pan, is nervous about becoming the boss of the 45th floor. If he wins, he'll have no time for Ryuka or adventuring. He doesn't want to disappoint Cobb, who had recommended him, but Van doubts he's ready for such a big role. Cobb had told him not to worry about failing and just do his best. So Van decides to try, even if he's secretly aiming to lose. When his turn comes, Van quickly defeats his golem opponent, worried his moves might give him away. But when he looks around, everyone is cheering, and he's confused. They didn't notice his skills. Rich asks why Van looks so serious after doing so well. The first test ends with Van, Rich, and Hydra advancing to the next stage. The next day, Van, Rich, and Hydra prepare for their interviews. Only one will become the new boss of the 45th floor. Van is feeling nervous, especially since Ryuka will be one of the interviewers. She hints that the day will be busy, but Van tries to hide his anxiety, lying about having nothing on his mind. Meanwhile, the monster executives discuss the competition, surprised that Hydra made it. Van wonders what to do next. Benora, the Poison Dragon Princess, quietly plans a coup, feeling the dungeon should belong to her, especially since the Black Dragon King, Obsidian, is a threat to her family. She's pleased that no one caught on to her identity. On the other hand, adventurers are pairing up, gossiping about Van's childhood friend, Ryuka. They find it odd that no girl wants to team up with the guy in the bandana, wishing they could get along with a girl too. Little do they know, the bandana adventurer's partner in the helmet is actually a girl, but he's too clueless to notice. The second stage of the competition begins, an interview with the three candidates sitting in front of Ryuka. Van, disguised as a monster, notices that Ryuka has figured out his act. It's too late to back out now, but he feels a bit relieved, thinking maybe this will help him fail the interview. Ryuka's expression is unreadable, and the Lady Dragon is thoroughly enjoying Van's panic, deciding to let the drama unfold. When it's Van's turn to introduce himself, Ryuka laughs, making him even more nervous. Wool notices, but Harpy is already annoyed that he's nervous so early. Mino kicks off the questions, asking the candidates how they'd manage the 45th floor. Rich answers first, clearly aiming high. His plan is to gather all the cuties and turn the floor into a palace. His desires are as grand as ever, but it seems he's forgotten that being the boss requires more than just harem building. Rich is quickly told by Orc that his personality needs work before he can even think about ranks, while Mino is on the verge of losing it, declaring that harems are off limits. Rich suggests using bones to demoralize adventurers, but Mino quickly dismisses the idea. Despite his flashy attitude, Mino sees that Rich has skills, though his ego often clouds his judgment, especially when working under the Dragon King. Harpy cheekily asks if Rich could be demoted to grunt work on the first floor, leaving him terrified. Now it's Van's turn. Deciding to do the complete opposite of his earlier performance, he asks if it's okay for him to just stand there and do nothing. Wool thinks it's a bit dull, but Orc comes up with a strategy. Imagine adventurers, exhausted after battling countless monsters, coming across Pan just standing there, waiting. The simplicity of it makes him sound like a terrifying boss, because sometimes the less you do, the more others assume you're a force to be reckoned with. Harpy asks Van how things are going on the first floor and if he has any complaints. Van assures them that everything is perfect. Cobb and the others are kind, and it's rewarding work. He shares how he started as a clueless newbie, but Cobb taught him how to analyze opponents, strategize, and even help adventurers recover. Ryuka, still suspicious, wonders what Van is up to, while he continues to praise the first floor, saying it's full of effort and care. He even says he loves the Dragon King and the monsters there. This makes Ryuka blush, leading Wool to think that she's unwell, and Rich dramatically gushes over Pan's nice soul. However, the third participant isn't impressed, stating that the 45th floor she envisions is far more serious than all this sentimentality. Benora reveals herself as the third participant, sparking anger among Ryuka's executives with her disrespectful comments about the Dragon King. The room fills with noise as everyone starts speaking at once, until Ryuka quiets them all down. Van reflects on the taunts he's been hearing about him and Ryuka, feeling numb from all the attention. He wonders if people see him and Ryuka as a couple. Meanwhile, Mino challenges Benora, saying her claims are unproven, and questions if the Poison Dragon Lord even knows what she's up to. Benora silences them by transforming into a dragon, furious over losing a precious position. Ryuka also shifts into her dragon form, and the two face off. Benora unleashes her poison dragon power, but Ryuka dodges it, surprising her opponent. Benora calls for her poison masters to join the fight, but Ryuka's team is ready. The poison monsters hesitate, struggling against the toxic smoke that surrounds them. The battle between the two dragon ladies rages on, with Ryuka dodging and slashing while Benora attacks fiercely. Meanwhile, Orc clears the air, and Mino defeats Benora's monsters without lifting a finger. The executives quickly wipe out all the poison monsters, impressing Ryuka with their strength. Orc watches Ryuka, thinking she's tough but not unbeatable. Benora, injured and frustrated, feels the power gap between her and Ryuka. The executives suggest she surrender, but Benora refuses, unwilling to accept being defeated. After all, the Poison Dragon has served the Black Dragon King for generations. Benora recalls her father's words about the 45th floor being crucial to the Dragon Abyss, and how she once dreamed of leading it with him. But after Ryuka's father made her the successor, everything changed. Benora's dad was pushed out of leadership, given a lesser role, and fell into depression. This made Benora angry and determined to restore her father's pride. In a fit of rage, she releases a toxic cloud of poison across the floor, making the executives feel its deadly sting. But they quickly realize that she's gone too far, as the poison is beyond her control. Just when it seems things will spiral out of hand, Ryuka takes action, shocking everyone by swallowing the poison herself. The Dragon King munches on Lady Benora, while everyone watches in horror. After a few minutes, the Dragon King spits Benora out, and she plummets to the ground. While she looks like a slime on the verge of death, everyone rushes to see how she's doing. As Benora regains consciousness, she realizes the poison that was eating away at her life force is suddenly gone. She looks up and sees Ryuka. It turns out, the Dragon King has absorbed all of Benora's poison to save her life. Unfortunately, it takes a toll on Ryuka's body, and as soon as she appears in her human form, she passes out. Before she can collapse on the ground, someone catches her in his arms. It is Van. Minotaur loses it when he sees Pan. Only Ryuka knows that Pan is Van. Everyone tries to calm Minotaur down by reminding him that now is not the time for paranoid delusions, as Ryuka is literally struggling for her life. Minotaur dramatically collapses on the ground. Meanwhile, the others do their best to help Ryuka. After a minute or two, Ryuka moves. Everyone takes a breath of relief. At first, it looks like she's trying to say something, so everyone leans in closer. But when she opens her mouth, she pukes out all of the toxins that she had absorbed earlier. Lich hilariously turns into Brook from One Piece after all the ashes and smoke fall onto his bald head. Ryuka notices that she is in the arms of Pan, who she knows is Van. At first, she panics and turns red out of embarrassment. However, when she notices the concerned look on Van's face, she reassures him that she's doing okay. Benora stands at a distance and wonders why the Dragon King saved her. Suddenly, she hears a familiar voice calling out her name. It's her dad. Let's completely ignore Minotaur's Oscar-worthy performance. We have important matters at hand. The Poison Dragon Lord has arrived. He reveals that he found everything about her rebellion and self-destructive attack from the Hydra. Benora immediately starts bawling her eyes out and explains her perspective. In her eyes, her dad used to be the pride of the 45th floor, until they dishonored him and kicked him out. She was tired of watching her dad get bullied at his new workplace. Her dad takes a deep breath and clarifies that everything has been a massive misunderstanding. He explains that it was he who decided to resign from the executive position. He has faced many enemies in the past and spilled bloodshed. When the Dragon King introduced the policy that no monster or adventurer should die, the Poison Dragon Lord assumed that he would just be in the king's way, and gave away the floor to Inferno. Benora is informed that even after the resignation, her father is still actively contributing as chief of the Potion Research Department. Benora claims that seeing his clothes tattered caused her to assume he gets bullied at work. He explains that it was due to the toxic potions he was creating. He tells her daughter that protecting the Dragon Abyss is his pride and joy, but his biggest pride is being her father. Benora starts to tear up and lowers her head to the ground. Ryuka realizes that she's about to have a breakdown. She cries her heart out and apologizes to everyone. In the end, the only ones who were present knew about the coup. Ryuka has yet to decide on a punishment. Mr. Lich is made head of the floor. The first thing that Mr. Lich declares is that he wants a harem. Ryuka accepts his wish, but instead of hot women, he gets a harem of poison monsters. Van whispers to Ryuka that he wants to help in the activities of the dungeons as a part-time job, so he would really appreciate it if she keeps his identity a secret. Meanwhile, their subordinates are trying their best to eavesdrop on their conversation. Van asks Ryuka how she knew it was him, and she smiles before responding that she could tell from his eyes. As soon as the words leave her mouth, she becomes flustered. Van, being a dense protagonist, asks her if she's making fun of his eyes. Another day arrives in the deepest part of the Dragon Abyss. Benora is visiting Ryuka in her private room to apologize to her. Not sure if anything can be called private in this dungeon, all thanks to Ryuka's nosy subordinates, who are always lurking in the corner. They immediately question why a girl is entering the Dragon King's room. Minotaur goes as far as to question subtly if their lady dragon is gay. Poor Benora is just here to apologize. She feels guilty and has brought something as a token of apology. She presents Doku cookies, traditional cookies of her clan. Minotaur, our drama queen, yells and claims that there is something poisonous in the cookies. Ryuka, embarrassed by her subordinates, gobbles down the cookies to prove that Benora's baking skills are remarkable. After everyone leaves, Ryuka asks Benora what she has been doing lately. She responds that she has been helping her dad out. Ryuka commends her for being too mature and understanding for a 14-year-old. They both drink tea, and then there is pin-drop silence. Both of them are too awkward to socialize, especially Ryuka. Dragons are known to be antisocial creatures. Their only priority is hoarding a treasure and guarding the dungeon. Ryuka was hoping that it would be easier to talk to a fellow dragon that was around her age. Meanwhile, Benora is already making up a delusional scenario in her head. She assumes that Ryuka, being the Dragon King, must have gotten so angry that she doesn't want to talk to her anymore. They both utilize their maximum brain power to figure out how to break the awkward silence. Eventually, Benora asks Ryuka if she likes books, and she enthusiastically answers. Benora finds a book in her collection and starts freaking out. When Ryuka asks if she's okay, Benora states that she has the book as well. Ryuka freezes in her place. The book is supposed to be super niche. They both start yapping about how they love the plot. In short, it's about a hero who gets banished from a party, but then remembers that he used to be a demon king 1,000 years ago. They are so excited that they hold each other's hands. Two introverted geeks have formed a deep bond that is sure to last. Ryuka has met Sylvia, Electra, and Benora this year. She's making new friends and she's happy about that. Benora reveals that she also writes novels thanks to her wild imagination. Ryuka asks her to explain her wild imagination and immediately regrets it, as Benora states that she has been imagining Ryuka and Van, the adventurer, being a romantic couple. When Ryuka gets flustered, Benora tells her to ignore it and apologizes, as there's no way a Dragon King would be with a mere human adventurer. Van, being the king of the worst timing possible, enters the room and asks Ryuka if he can hang out. Benora is caught off guard and she starts screaming for help. Minotaur, the master of never minding his business, assumes that something is off. Ryuka calms Benora down and introduces Van as her childhood friend. Benora asks Ryuka in geek language if he's the type of friend from the books who becomes manipulative when he gets rejected. Van politely asks them to stop speaking of him in a language that he can't understand. Ryuka reassures Benora that despite his looks, Van is a normal person. Benora claims that Van has a bright aura and a sunny personality. In her opinion, someone like him can't coexist with Ryuka, who belongs in the shadows. Benora believes that Van has an ulterior motive and wants to make Ryuka part of his harem by using the excuse of childhood friends. Ryuka wonders if Benora is letting her imagination run wild again. Van chuckles slightly and remarks that he's happy that Ryuka is making new friends again. Ryuka pouts and angrily asks him why he's acting like he's her parent or something. She tells him to stop making her out to be some kind of loner. Benora observes their conversation from afar, with each second her excitement arises. The duo is bickering like her favorite couple from a novel, who were also childhood friends. She realizes that what Ryuka and Van share is love in its purest form. Benora has an indescribable expression on her face. If we didn't know any better, we would assume that she's planning world domination. She excuses herself and immediately goes to her room. She grabs her pen and starts writing down a love story. She would have made a great Wattpad fanfic writer. Meanwhile, Ryuka is worried that she went too far in her argument with Van. On another day, Minotaur and Saki go out on a date. The tension between them is so high that it heats up the restaurant. So how did these two end up in this situation? A few days ago, Mino stated that if it weren't for Saki's incredible skills during the dungeon competition, they wouldn't have won. He wanted to express his gratitude properly, but didn't know what he should do. That's when he remembered Saki once said something about having dinner together. Mino wanted to invite everyone, but some of them had enough brain cells to force him to take her out alone. Ryuka secretly heard of this conversation and felt proud of him. Mino's friends are equally as nosy as him and have been secretly observing his date. They are doing a commentary on their every move. Shockingly, Van and Ryuka are also there. Van mentions there's a possibility that Saki likes Mino. Ryuka is excited and claims that she's only spying on them for work purposes. When they see the menu, everyone starts drooling. Mino asks Saki how she's doing at work, and she replies that she's finally improving her skills instead of whining. Mino compliments her, and everyone is shocked at his riz. Mino requests Saki to not be shy and order anything that she wants. Saki takes the words literally and orders an entire list, making the spies wonder if the dungeon is going broke tonight. One of them secretly orders a special menu for the couple. The waiter tells Mino to wait in the other room and shower while his menu is being prepared. Mino assumes that all the fancy restaurants must have silly etiquette like this. He trims his nails and polishes his teeth and horns as he's told. Meanwhile, Saki is told to wait as a special dish for her is getting prepared. As the curtains open and the spotlight shines, the special dish is revealed to be Mino himself. Everyone's jaw drops to the floor. Saki asks the waiter if she can eat normal food as well. The waiter tells them both to eat to their heart's content. After the night is over, Mino calls the restaurant stupid and Saki apologizes for a bad experience. Mino reassures her that she doesn't have to be sorry about anything. He admits that he used to think lowly of succubi until he met her. He commends her for being diligent and tells her to just be herself. Saki reminds herself that Mino probably cares about everyone like that. She is about to say something when Mino interrupts her and says he didn't get to eat another. He asks her if she would want to eat from the local stall. Mino and Saki enjoy each other's company and fill their tummies, while the spies wonder if they should hit another restaurant as they didn't get to eat either. They probably lost their appetite after seeing Mino inside the salad dish, ready to be eaten by Saki. Gold and Mino are getting trained by Van. Van is in his battle mode and is utterly ruthless on both. They put up a good fight but eventually collapse on the ground. Van tells Gold that he's swinging too wide and letting the counter get to him. Meanwhile, Mino's shooting rhythm is monotonous every 12,000 shots. An absolute beast indeed. Gold requests him for another match and Mino comments that he's one tough cookie. The battle starts again and we see what it looks like for bystanders. They can't see anything because of how fast and intense it is. For them, it just looks like an atomic bomb exploding. It isn't shocking for them as it's a battle with the top tier of the world. Meanwhile, Ryuka is having a girls' night where they're discussing her embarrassing childhood stories. After that, they ask Sylvia why Gold loves fighting so much. They comment that his passion is almost scary. Sylvia smiles and states that Gold simply wants to battle with Van, whereas the latter wishes to practice his newly forged Stole-on Gold. Sylvia explains that he isn't only passionate about fighting, but also likes cute little animals. Her biggest flex is that she's Gold's top favorite. Meanwhile, Gold is relishing his battle with Van. He gets carried away and shouts that fighting is all he needs in his life. Van teases him by saying that he will snitch on him to Sylvia, causing Gold to panic. Van claims that up until now, his power has only been the combined power of Mino and Gold. Now he's going to double it. Gold comments that the precision in adjusting combat skills is terrifying. To him, Van is a true embodiment of talent and hard work. While Van is in his undefeatable state, Ryuka tells her besties that Van may have monstrous strength, but he has plenty of weaknesses as well. For instance, fish eggs. He gets goosebumps every time he sees them. They wonder if he has a phobia of some sort and makes a list of all the things with a similar texture as fish eggs. Meanwhile, even the bystanders have joined the fight against Van. It's 1v4 now. The girls then ask the older ladies if they have any spicy romantic tea to spill. Ryuka immediately responds that there is none from her side. One of them asks Sylvia if Van is popular back home, since he has a very cheerful personality. Ryuka seems super interested in Sylvia's answer. She looks equally as nervous too. Sylvia responds that Van is popular among everyone, from the old adventurer men to the reception girls. Everyone who meets him wishes to take care of him as if he's their younger sibling. Ryuka can't believe what she's hearing. She would have never imagined that Van could act spoiled. She's a little annoyed that he's never shown her this side of his. Sylvia reads Ryuka's expression and comments that when she and Gold were 16, he always gave a cold shoulder too. Ryuka starts to blush when she realizes that she and Van are being compared to a romantic couple. Suddenly, everyone starts teasing her, causing Ryuka to stutter. It's another chaotic day, and it's hard to believe what's in front of our eyes. Van is taking off his jacket while Ryuka asks him if he's really going to do it. She blushes and avoids contact. When Van tells her to stop overthinking, she claims that she needs to mentally prepare herself first. What in the world is cooking here? There is no way we're misreading the room. Turns out they were just talking about cleaning the house. Gusan has made a special request to Van, and he's passing off his main job to Ryuka. Ryuka assures him that Gusan keeps everything so clean that there is hardly any need to clean anything. Van tells her to stop underestimating him. He turns into a pro cleaner as if he'd been patiently waiting for this day to come. Ryuka recalls telling her that Van might try to show off in front of her if he likes her. While Ryuka is busy daydreaming, Van finds a place where Ryuka has secretly been stashing all the trash and useless items. He even comes across a novel that she was in the process of writing but grew out of the phase. Ryuka tries to snatch it from his head but falls on top of him. You're probably wondering if the four nosy idiots are witnessing such a romantic moment. Fortunately, no. Today is the entire Dragon Abyss's big cleanup day, and tomorrow is the annual Stampede Day, where they just run around like maniacs and try to scare the adventurers, so their schedule is tight. Everyone wants to win the race, so they may give the Dragon King the prize. And the prize is an exclusive day at the beach for Ryuka and Van. From an adventurer's point of view, the Stampede looks horrifying. Meanwhile, Ryuka and Van are busy wiping dust off objects, as if it's a filler episode. For executives, it's do or die. They can't run well due to the extra weight, but they're still giving it their all. It is the four idiots versus the four heavenly kings. Both teams wish to earn the Dragon King's favor. Mr. Unicorn rushes towards the gate that is guarded by adventurers, but he gets distracted by Sylvia's beauty. Before he could get to her, Gold knocks him out. The next fight is between Mino and Gold. He tells Happy and to keep it running. These so-called Heavenly Kings get distracted by the Dragon King's merch stall. It is a perfect chance for Happy and to win. Unfortunately, an infighting erupts when Happy expresses their desire to see Ryuka in a bikini at the beach. Argues that there will be nothing lewd involved, and they will simply be building castles. Unicorn passes them by at lightning speed, forcing Harpy to give a kick with the help of his wings so that they might win. Thanks to his brilliant plan, the four idiots win, allowing everyone to enjoy a day at the beach. All of the NPCs arrive early at the beach and patiently wait for Van and Ryuka. Happy narrates how excited they are to watch Ryuka and Van as they observe each other's mature bodies. They especially want to see Ryuka's thick tail. Well, the couple arrives, but to Harpy's disappointment, they are fully covered. Happy goes on a rampage and tells them to show their belly buttons at least, or even their armpits or thighs. The others try to gag and get rid of Happy. Even Minos has the decency to apologize to Ryuka for Happy's behavior. Meanwhile, one of the 7 heroes, Spica, has decided to investigate the Dragon Abyss. Everyone is enjoying the day at the beach, except for Happy the Freak, who has been buried alive and for the right reasons. Another person who is working his butt off is Lich. He's been commanded that not even a great hero should get through today. Coincidentally, Spica has also attacked them on their beach day. Lich manages to push her back, but it turns out it's all part of her plan. She just needed time to activate her true sight ability. She notices that there are multiple magical barriers. She is so desperate that she places her face on the ground to focus harder. She looks for golden eyes and black horns. She finds the Dragon King, but is shocked by the scene. Naked men and women are bathing together. She wonders if she's dreaming when she notices the hero laughing around with the Dragon King. The shenanigans continue, and they decide to play 2-on-2 beach volleyball. Van wants to team up with Ryuka, but she looks lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, she takes off her jacket and claims that she read somewhere that beach volleyball should be played with tight swimsuits. Van looks as if someone has electrocuted him. Happy emerges from her grave after witnessing Ryuka's killer body. Ryuka blushes and asks Van how she's looking. Hopefully, Van will shoot his shot. The 2-on-2 beach volleyball game kicks off under the hot sun. On one side is the Dragon King Ryuka with Van. On the other side stand Benora and Gusan. The crowd is ready, though no one's sure if this is a game or a death wish, considering the players involved. The losing team has to face a penalty game, which already sounds cursed. The first serve sets the mood. Van notices Gusan's power and can't help but be impressed. It's been years since he's faced her. Gusan shrugs off the compliment. She says she's retired and just a maid now, but she still carries herself like she's about to crush him. Bannora isn't as confident until Gusan tells her she came up with the penalty game idea with Happy before the match. She whispers the details, and suddenly Bannora looks way too motivated. The ball flies across the court, except it's not normal at all. Gusan hurls a poison ball straight at Van. The crowd screams. The Minotaur wonders out loud how it isn't melted into slime, and Van casually promises to blow the poison out of it mid-air. Ryuka sighs like this is her everyday life. The match goes wild. Sand is flying, the audience is yelling, and somehow everyone is treating poison volleyball like it's a sport in the Olympics. The Dragon King Ryuka spikes like a queen. Van saves impossible shots, and yet Bannora and Gusan start to edge ahead. Against all logic, they actually reach match point. The crowd is hyped, but Ryuka is sweating bullets. She is absolutely sure that if these two win, the penalty game will be something perverted. There is no way she's letting that happen. She locks in, ready to bring fire. But before the last point can be played, Van senses something off. The sky darkens and a huge shadow spreads over the beach. The cheers turn into absolute panic. A massive mana monster crashes down as if it's crashing a party it wasn't invited to. The beach shakes, the sea foams, and the game is instantly over. Chaos explodes and everyone runs in circles. Weapons? Oh right, those were left near the changing area because who brings a sword to a beach day? Now everyone is realizing that maybe they should have. The monster's limbs lash out and grab Ryuka before she can transform into her dragon form. She hangs on, gritting her teeth, while her servants lose their minds and start hurling seashells and driftwood at the beast. Unsurprisingly, seashells don't do much, of course. Van steps up, dead serious. A karate chop won't cut it here. He asks Orc if he has anything. Orc digs around and proudly hands over a wooden stick for splitting watermelons. That's it. That's the weapon. Van takes it like it's a lightsaber and gets ready to throw hands with a monster 10 times his size. Meanwhile, far away in the dungeon, Lich and the others spot a shady figure lurking on one of the lower floors, because clearly one disaster at a time isn't enough. Van grips the watermelon stick like it's a legendary weapon. Nobody expects much, but he swings it with sharp precision and actually manages to hurt the monster. He grabs Ryuka from its grip mid-swing, holding her steady as if this is all part of his plan. In the middle of the chaos, he casually compliments her swimsuit, making her blush. The crowd almost faints from the smoothness of that move. Van doesn't waste time. He channels his sword technique into the stick, slashing down with full force. The monster splits cleanly in two like an actual watermelon at a summer picnic. No matter how anyone looks at it, this is definitely not a technique meant for watermelons. The monster collapses, dissolving into mana, and everyone cheers as if they've just seen the finale of an action movie. Orc, though, stands in disbelief. A mana monster invading this far in? That isn't normal. He decides he'll have to investigate later, but for now, everyone remembers the game that they were supposed to be playing, the volleyball match. Gusan doesn't hesitate. She declares her team the winners. Ryuka, too tired to argue, accepts the loss without a fight and says she's going to rest. She leaves Van behind on the beach, still holding the watermelon stick like a trophy. But peace doesn't last long. Van starts to feel something strange again. It isn't the monster he's just destroyed. This feels different, like another disturbance coming from the upper floors of the dungeon. Up above, Lich and his group creep through the corridors. They spot someone lurking, someone that shouldn't. It's the hero. The sight is uncanny, because the upper floors are supposed to be protected by barriers put up by Orc and his team. No human should be able to break through. Maybe this is the rumored divine protection for all the heroes at work. Lich has never even managed to peek into these floors before, so seeing a human casually walking here sets off alarms. He quickly decides to chase him down. His plan is simple: catch the hero and erase only his memories of this place. The hero, named Spica, meanwhile, mutters to himself as he moves. He regrets not hurrying earlier, but can't stop thinking about how Van took down a mana monster with nothing but a stick. To him, that is proof that Van is at the level of a true great hero. Something feels off though. Van never showed a single drop of mana during the fight. Maybe he also has divine protection. That would explain how such a ridiculous technique was even possible. The hero explores more of the dungeon as he hides from Lich's group. What he sees blows his mind. The civilization level here is insane, higher than most big cities. There's even a school, a golem workshop, and ether air flowing freely on every floor, when normally it only exists on the deepest levels. The dungeon is basically 5-star living conditions. It doesn't make sense that such a place is run like a normal dungeon. Maybe Ryuka is fueling it with her mana. If that's true, then her power is beyond even Van and the hero himself. And if she ever transforms into a demon lord, like the prophecy warns, the world would be doomed. The hero hides in the shadows, but trouble finds him anyway. A new mana monster, born from the dungeon's leftover mana, blocks his path. The hero braces himself for a fight. Then, out of nowhere, the monster speaks. The entire crew is chilling at the beach having a barbecue when Van looks over at the Dragon King and casually asks if she's feeling better. Instead of answering straight, she flips the question to Benora, wanting to know what this so-called penalty game is about. Gusan steps in, saying they're about to start soon, and that it's basically a test of courage. The kind of thing you already know is about to be dumb. Losers get picked, and before anyone can protest, Van and the Dragon King, plus their servants, are shoved into some random cave. The vibe shifts instantly. It's dark, quiet, and kind of damp. They sit there like, so are we just supposed to tell scary stories, or what? It feels less like a test of courage and more like a middle school sleepover. Orc kicks it off. He clears his throat like he's about to drop a masterpiece. He goes back to his teen days in his home village. In the middle of the night, he hears this weird groan. Spooky, right? He follows it and sees some round creepy beast crawling into the food storage. He sneaks in to check, and bam, there's this ghostly figure of a woman, just straight up devouring every potato in sight. Like, not bread, not rice, but potatoes. The Dragon King and Van just stare. Not scared, not impressed, more like, okay bro, is this a scary story or a diet plan? Minotaur refuses to let this flop. He starts with a small town romance vibe. A boy and a girl, the same age, they pinky promise to marry one day. Sweet, right? Then, out of nowhere, this flashy guy shows up, throws a party, and the girl ditches the whole promise for the party life. When the boyfriend goes to find her, she's already completely head over heels for the flashy guy. That's the story. It's not scary, it's depressing. Van and Ryuka start clowning him like he just trauma dumped instead of telling a ghost story. Benora takes the stage next. She does the whole vampire vibe, going into detail, building suspense, and it turns out the plan was simple. Tell enough scary stories to push Van and the Dragon King closer so they end up comforting each other. Very sly and sneaky indeed. Gusan tries but immediately starts off into some overly dramatic romance plot, and before it can get fully weird, everyone shuts her down. Van and Ryuka eventually just step out of the cave. The sky is clear, stars everywhere, the ocean waves hitting in the distance. They talk about how they'll see the real ocean one day, not just the pretend vacation version. Van compliments her swimsuit again because Ryuka literally asks him to. He calls her cute and then gets embarrassed about it. She tells him to quit hiding his emotions and just let the embarrassment show. He actually listens, blushing hard, and Ryuka realizes she kind of loves this soft, awkward side of him. Meanwhile, the rest of the group peeks from afar, watching like it's reality TV. They see the shift, the spark, and honestly, it's about time. Spica stumbles back to his party, all bruised up and looking awful. Everyone immediately asks if the Dragon Abyss group had jumped him. Turns out, not even close. What actually happened is worse. Lich rolled up with his crew and took down the mana monster right in front of Spica while he bailed. And, just when he thought he was safe at the entrance, he managed to get hurt in a completely unrelated spot. Classic Spica. He complains that the healer wouldn't even patch him up, which earns him zero sympathy. His party just stares at him like, bro, this is embarrassing. Then they roast him about it. He pulls himself together enough to give his report. He explains everything he saw inside the dungeon, especially the part about the mana monster talking like it had its own mind. That catches everyone's attention for a second, but the mood doesn't last. They still have almost no information on Van. Someone brings up Prominence, since he grew up in the same village as Van until about 5 years ago. Prominence shrugs and says the only thing he remembers is Van constantly training up at the mountain peak. Not exactly helpful. Before all this mess, Prominence was outside with his attendant Electra, sitting together in that calm before the storm kind of way. He wonders if Spica will come back safe, since this report might be the key to a future clash with Van's group. Electra tries to reassure him, promising she won't leave his side no matter what. It's a wholesome little moment, until Safid barges in and ruins the whole vibe. The other 7 heroes, who have been watching from the sidelines, instantly get annoyed. The heroes press Prominence with the big question. What's the actual deal between the great hero and the Demon King? Prominence breaks it down as a history lesson no one asked for. Thousands of years ago, monsters appeared with their boss, the Demon King. That's when heroes started popping up too, and the cycle began. Hero beats Demon King, next generation brings a new Demon King, and a new hero steps up. Over and over, same story. Fast forward to 10 years ago. The latest Demon King got wrecked by hero Marusha, which gave the world a brief pause in the chaos. Peace, at least on paper. But every generation, both the heroes and the Demon Kings keep getting stronger, which sounds great until you realize it means the future Demon King is going to be insanely overpowered. Right now, Prominence is already standing as the strongest hero, even without a Demon King around. But that only raises the stakes. If a new Demon King shows up, it'll be someone way scarier than before, which is exactly why Prominence insists that they can't let the Black Dragon King transform into a demon. If that happens, it's game over for literally everyone. The Dragon King's servants are stressing out. To them, Ryuka and Van are basically childhood friends who skipped straight to almost married, but now the bond looks shaky. They worry that once romantic feelings get involved, things never stay the same. And Ryuka refusing to confess, that's a red flag. Ryuka clearly knows Van likes her back, but she's not the type to confess just for the sake of starting something. She's too comfortable with how things are now. The servants hate this attitude. They wonder what if another girl swoops in and she ends up losing her own love story. While they panic, Van suddenly shows up. That's when Ryuka starts spiraling. It feels like a confession option just appeared in her dialogue box. She opens her mouth to say something, but fear kicks in. Instead of spilling her heart, she blurts out something about the weather. The crew collectively facepalm. Later, Ryuka throws all decision-making to her servants, who dive into strategy talks about Buyan and the heroes who clearly hate the Dark Lord and his crew. The ninja hero, the pharma hero, the rain hero. Everyone's in the mix. Even Pooh and his gang show up, but Minotaur argues Van should be the one to restrain him. In the middle of all this chaos, Ryuka casually drops her feelings for Van. The servants freeze. Did she just... Yes, she did. They're thrilled, finally hearing her admit it out loud. Excited, they tell her it's time to go into full romance mode. Ryuka, who is pretty clueless, asks for tips. Problem is, none of them know a thing about dating. Their genius plan? Do things Van likes, raise his affection meter, then confess, kiss, and roll credits. Minotaur disagrees, saying confessing right away is too soon. They continue fighting over strategies while Ryuka is left wondering what will happen to her love story. Ryuka and her crew gather to watch the big showdown that's supposed to decide the superior goblin. Van shows up in full tin armor, hiding his identity, and calls himself Pan. Ryuka flashes him a thumbs up, totally backing his undercover act. To keep things fair, they've even invited a few judges, including Wildcat, the restaurant owner who looks way too excited about free food. The first contest is cooking. Makes sense, since in dungeons, monsters aren't just swinging swords. They also whip up potions, prepare meals, and make sure adventurers don't starve while looting. Hob isn't thrilled. He argues cooking has nothing to do with being a goblin, but Wildcat shuts him down, handing over ingredients from her kitchen. The cook-off begins, and both goblins lock in. Hob shows surprising skill, bragging about how he used to be the meal guy in foreign dungeons back in his rookie days. Pan doesn't say much, but mentions he used to make sweets with friends. Ryuka watches from the sidelines, impressed that Pan actually knows his way around a kitchen. Judging time rolls around. Hob presents grilled bone-in meat with a dramatic goblin-style flair. It's juicy, smoky, and even looks fancy. The judges love it. Then Pan sets down a sandwich. No frills, no fireworks, just plain bread and pickles. Everyone thinks it looks boring until they take a bite. Suddenly, the room changes. The sandwich slaps and tastes better than Hob's meat dish. Simple, but so good. Wildcat drops some wisdom, saying strong monsters are like intense meat. They hit hard but burn out fast. Goblins, though, are like pickles. Resilient, adaptable, and perfect for balance. Hob's pride crumbles as the judges ignore his dish. He finally tastes Pan's sandwich himself and breaks down crying. It reminds him of his dad. Pan admits that he copied Gob's sandwiches, the kind that kept goblins steady against adventurers and connected the upper and lower dungeon layers. Hob bows his head, admits defeat, and Gob welcomes him back like a proud father. The wholesome moment doesn't last. Minotaur charges at Pan, demanding he take off his helmet. Everyone gasps when Van's face is revealed. The mystery goblin was him the whole time. Turns out, a few hours earlier, on the first level of Dragon Pit, Gob had told Van his shift as a monster was over. Yeah, Van moonlights more as a dungeon worker than an adventurer now. Over sandwiches in the cafeteria, Hob had returned from years away, bragging about his foreign dungeon experience. He mocked the goblins here, saying they were weak and spineless for not killing adventurers. To him, if the lower ranks are weak, they'll only attract weak challengers. He doesn't want to be dungeon fodder anymore. He wants riches and glory. Van couldn't stand hearing Gob insulted, so he called Hob outdated and challenged him to prove what a true goblin really is. Later, he explained everything to Ryuka, apologizing for dragging her into the drama. But Ryuka isn't having anyone disrespect her dungeon's veterans. She's all in, standing with him as they prepare for the showdown. Together, they studied goblin life like it was exam season, grinding until competition day finally arrived. Ryuka tells Van to make sure he has a proper sit-down with Mr. Cobb, warning him to leave the other monsters to her and the crew. She turns to her people, telling them to gear up. Minotaur asks what she's planning, but Ryuka keeps it unclear, reminding them that she's the master of the Dragon Abyss and expects them to follow the plan, no questions asked. A few hours later, the big stage was set. Ryuka stands in front of the entire dungeon, practically holding a press conference. The crowd of monsters stares her down, and the mood is sour. Nobody is thrilled about the reveal that Pan was Van all along. The worst part? Ryuka knew about it and kept it quiet. That betrayal stings a lot for them. It turns out that the goblins had spoken up first. After the cooking showdown, they had genuinely respected Pan, thinking he was a solid, straight-up kid. Now Hob and the others complain that he was lying to their faces this whole time. Gob tries to shut them down, telling everyone to go back to their posts, but the trust is already shaken. The crew isn't any less shocked. They didn't expect Van to pull this either, and their faith shakes a little. At least the townsfolk outside the dungeon haven't heard about any of this yet, which saves some face. Still, during the dragon descent, Van's involvement has already been exposed, and now the bosses from the upper and lower floors are demanding answers. The atmosphere turned into a blame game. The crew argues and points fingers, each one accusing another of keeping secrets or messing things up. The noise builds until Van steps forward. He admits everything, how he sneaked around pretending to be a monster, how it all spiraled out of control, and how Ryuka got dragged into his mess. He apologizes in front of everyone, taking full responsibility. Ryuka doesn't let him carry all the weight. She admits she kept it a secret too. Van tries to make it right by promising not to mess around with other monsters again. Instead, he says he'll just sneak into the dungeon quietly to see Ryuka without making a big fuss. It sounds like a clean solution in his head, but Ryuka immediately shuts it down. She tells him flat out that she doesn't want to go back to square one. Meeting only in secret feels like throwing away everything they've built together. She points out how much he's come to love not just her, but also everyone in the dungeon. And she reminds him that this is exactly who he is. Someone who pushes forward with brute force. No half measures and no hiding. That's the Van she knows as her words leave him speechless.